Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans? And welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about Season 3's episode, Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian, The Spies. And we're just going to begin talking about all of the news that came out of Star Wars Celebration, but we cannot promise that we're going to talk about it all tonight. That is going to take many, many weeks, perhaps months to get to. But I do want to let people know, if you just watch our show on YouTube, there is content that exists off YouTube for once.
Quite a bit of content.
For once, which I'm excited because usually we're here promoting the YouTube because we know everybody knows about the podcast feed. The YouTube is the new thing, the new kid on the block. But what we rarely do is promote exclusive content on the podcast feed. We have that this week. We have tons of exclusive content that is just audio content. Dominic was at Star Wars Celebration London, and he was not filming, but recording the entire time. So please, if you want to listen to his and other Star Wars Underworld contributors who were there, their immediate reactions to everything going on at Star Wars Celebration, including their spoiler-free review of the last episode of The Mandalorian, please check out our podcast feeds if you're just watching on YouTube. If you're listening to us on a podcast feed, you already know, you've probably already heard all of this great content. But if you're just watching us on YouTube, if that's how you found us, definitely subscribe to us on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, whoever you get your podcasts, or go and find what works best for your phone to find podcasts. We will be there, and that's where you can get all that great content from Star Wars Celebration. But don't worry, we're still going to talk about all of that great stuff on the YouTube series as well. And Dominic will be joining us in subsequent weeks to help us break all of that down. And we're going to get into talking a little bit about some of the highlights this week as well. All right, let's get into it. My name is Chris. Joining me, it's our founder, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? A lot happened since we last spoke, let me tell you. So yeah, we're not going to even scratch the surface on all that. As you can see, it was so much news that Dominic just had to take a breather. He just stepped away. He's just like, this almost killed me, so I'm gonna take a week off. So he's recovering. He'll be back next week, and we look forward to seeing him. But yeah, lots happened. We'll try to get into there's one piece that I really do want to talk about tonight. We'll try, but also the Mandalorian just keeps on. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and we have a lot to unpack there too. So I'm not making any promises, guys. Okay, if we can fit a Mandalorian discussion in the next 2 hours, I think we'll be doing okay.
Yes, we're going to try our best to not do a 4-hour long episode, which probably with the amount of content that we have, we probably could just go all night or all day or whatever time it is for you when you're watching. But don't worry, we will save some stuff for future weeks. Also joining us from the Raeside, it's Hannah.
G'day there. Great to be back. Also, I've got a bone to pick again. I had a bone to pick in the pre-show.
What bones to pick tonight?
And I got another one today. Why are we so lazy? Why am I not in the intro Why am I not in the intro song?
Why
I'm
are you
so
not in the
upset.
intro song?
I know. I got to come up with a snappy line though. That's
You
what.
got look.
That's actually
Start.
that's the real reason.
Start
I
writing.
haven't figured it. I haven't. Yeah, I haven't figured
I
it
think
out
a
yet.
person. I think the person who makes our intro must have. I don't know. I forget who it is. It's an amazing person, but I forget. I have to ask Dominic because it's one of Dominic's friends.
Amazing Anonymous.
Yes.
But no, yeah, it's great. It's great to be back. Like we said, how funny is it to look back on ourselves last week, and we didn't know Rey was about to come back. We didn't know that there was 3 movies ready to rumble. We didn't know there was a Ahsoka trailer coming. There was so much about to hit us, and we had no idea. I think it was almost 24 hours after. No, just a little bit more. And we had all that hit us, which was just insane. So it's I always like that in Star Wars, like thinking about being before really massive news
Dad,
drops.
it's your fault. Fix it.
Did you make it? Did you make it?
I thought it was a collaboration between Din and Dominic, but I wasn't sure because it happened so long ago.
Actually, it sounds like a Din riff. It sounds like something he would play. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to
Also,
get the
there's
this is on you.
yeah, and then there's the audio version predates the video version by a good long while, obviously.
Yes.
So there's this whole thing, and we have to update the audio and the video and simultaneously. It's a lot of moving pieces, guys, but I promise. I promise, Hannah, we're gonna do this.
Okay. I love this underworld production meeting. Anyway, yeah, Star Wars is great at the moment. So much to think and talk about. Can't wait for today's discussion. My God. Let's see if me and Ben have the same opinion again this week. Probably will.
This is gonna be very
Probably
interesting.
will.
All right, so let's get to talking about this in a hot second, but real quick, we just want to remind everybody who's watching on YouTube to punch that subscribe button. You can also super chat with us live. We go live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Date Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, or I don't know how time zones work anymore.
That time zone that's on the Eastern United States, whatever
Eastern
time it is,
time.
whenever it's 9:30 p.m.
time.
Eastern in New
We
York.
go live 9:30
okay?
New York time. It's live.
New York or Miami, okay?
That's right. And you can also become a channel member so you can support us outside of super chatting. And huge thanks to our awesome channel members that we have already. As I mentioned off the top of the show, we have podcast feeds as well that you can just listen to us on, because we don't recommend watching YouTube while you're driving or operating heavy machinery or operating on patients or whatever you do.
Or operating a giant mech suit. Because
Yes.
that's the thing.
Do not operate mech suits. While listening.
I love
or
how it
watching
sounds
to
like
our
a
show.
drug. The Underworld podcast is like a drug. Like you can't do it. All these
Stuff right
things.
here, man.
Get it in your veins.
So please subscribe over there as well and leave a review if you can. And that's where you have all that exclusive celebration audio content that Dominic put together this week. We also have a Discord that is popping with lots of game nights and movie nights and tons of discussion threads about so many things, not just Star Wars. So there's a link to that in the description and notes of wherever you can find this podcast. And of course, you can follow us on social media everywhere at the SWU. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about season 3, chapter. Oh, and Dominic apparently is joining us with the Blue Jays hat.
Well, Dom's not here today, and I always wear this when Dom's not here, as if he's dead or something. I don't know.
In memory of Dominic.
In memory of Dominic Jones.
Oh my
Hats
God.
on for Mr. Jones.
Buckets on. Oh my gosh.
Oh Lord! All right. Yes. What did you say? What are we doing? Are we talking about something?
I have no idea. He's muted.
Wait, he's muted. Oh, Chris, I thought it was. Oh, that's hilarious. That's great.
Anyway, we're talking about the Mandalorian season 3, chapter 23, The Spies. This episode was directed by Rick Famuyiwa and was written by Don Favloni, who is one of the best Star Wars writers out there.
My brain just malfunctioned. I don't understand that.
In this episode, Grogu gets a mecha suit, and
yes,
all types of shenanigans go down on Mandalore. That is your description. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Spot
No.
on.
No. Yes. No. Also, apparently, Grogu says his first words as well. And
What? What have you missed? Did I not watch the right
Technically
episode?
speaking, Taika Waititi is the voice of Grogu. Okay,
yes,
confirmed.
the Grogu's voice
Confirmed.
actor has been revealed to be Taika Waititi. It's the biggest moment.
His
of
first, and
this
we
episode.
nobody expected yes or no to be his first word, but here we are.
I forget which one was first. I think it was yes, but I'm not 100% sure. It was one of those two. I have a 50%
You
chance
got
of being
50-50,
right.
yeah. Come on.
That's right.
So
Flip the
close.
coin. So we're going to start talking about this episode by popular demand with the best and only segment that y'all come for.
I forgot about this. I forgot about this.
That is so
What are you doing?
confused. I'm also calling Ben's bluff that he said he was prepared for this.
I'm not sure I was this prepared though.
It's too late now. We're
God.
doing this.
What's
We're
happening?
doing this.
Should we
doing
do
this.
opening thoughts? Hang on. Should we do opening thoughts?
No, you said do this first.
Okay,
we're doing it first.
If we were doing it in the backwards
we're
order, we
committing.
would do closing thoughts,
All right.
and then we would do
Oh
this.
God Almighty. Let's commit. We gotta commit.
Here we go.
Let's
Here we
run
go.
the
It's
song.
the
Let's
only
go.
segment
We're
that
committing.
people come for. It's
We're
time
committing.
for
Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Why?
I swear.
Because we can.
if Dominic watches this episode, he's gonna quit.
We're gonna get the biggest talking down from him. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Look, he could have been here. You know, he had to get the
He could have
contract and just
stopped
stay
this.
out. But no, you know.
He could have stopped this.
Anywho, here we go. This feels real weird doing this right now. It feels real weird. Here we go. So we got a lot of cameos in that like real first scene of the episode. Obviously we got Gilad Paleon.
Yes.
Who just I forget the actor's name, but if you Google Paleon and look at a picture of him, so perfect, like the perfect casting. Like they looked at whatever the comics or the artist renderings from like 30 years ago, like, oh yeah, here's the guy. Like they did it perfect. And then also I'm watching this, and of course we get Brendel Hux, Commandant Brendel Hux, the father of the future General Armitage Hux of the First Order. And I'm like, okay, this is cool, but also he sounds really a lot like Donald Gleason. And I'm like, what is going on? How does he acing this voice so well? And it's because it is Donald Gleason's brother, Brian Gleason.
Oh,
so-
wow. My God, this is an amazing
I think a
segment.
lot of the writers and stuff, because the elder Hux, I should say, Brendel, is in a lot of the books. He's in Phasma. He's in the Aftermath trilogy. He's got a lot of development in the canon books universe, the paper canon, as we call it here at the Star Wars Underworld Network. But I think there were a lot of them were going off of their father, which I'm forgetting their names. Why am I blanking? No, the Gleason, Gleason's father.
I was thinking you were talking
He's in
about
Harry
character.
Potter. Why am I forgetting his name? Embarrassing. But yeah, so I think a lot of them were basing it off thing. Now we have confirmed Brian Gleason.
Brendan Gleason.
Brendan Gleason. Brendan, Brian, Donald. Okay, they got the whole family. So we got another Gleason in Star Wars. So that's pretty cool.
Also,
Perfect.
in the Oscar-nominated Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Wait,
so-
who does Brendan Gleeson play in Harry Potter?
He's Mad Eye Moody dude. Isn't he the guy with the Mad Eye Moody?
God, this is blowing my mind.
You
Because
didn't
I
know
just watched
this.
I watched that movie for the first time like a week ago. Oh my God. Oh my, this is insane, dude. All right, okay.
Yeah, it's all connected. I mean, and then Donald shows up later. He's in the movies too. He's in good old Hux is in there, everyone. Hux mentions Project Necromancer. I was curious, what is a necromancer? What does that mean? Necromancer is a person who practices necromancy. So I had to go look up.
So descriptive.
So I had to go look up what necromancy is, and necromancy is described, quote, the supposed practice of communicating with the dead, especially in order to predict the future. Did somebody say the dead speak? I don't know.
That's good find there.
So this isn't okay. This next one, Hannah, you have something.
I'm
to
mind
say?
blown. I'm like still like just catching up, bro. Like that is insane. That is, oh my God. Who could that be? Could that be like Plagueis? Or
There's
is
a lot
that
going
just
on
Snoke? Is it Palpatine?
It's gotta
Oh
be
my
Palpatine.
He freaking walked by those
I love
tanks of
this
clone
show.
bodies. What's going
I
on
love
there?
this show. I learned so much. I can't believe I'm on it. This is great.
Ben's education corner.
Okay, prepare to have your mind blown yet again.
Oh
And
no.
I promise, and I have to add this addendum because I often lie. I am not making this up. Not making this up.
I'm holding on to my brain. It's not going to escape.
So, someone on Twitter, and you could find this tweet retweeted on the Star Wars Underworld account on Twitter, but
at the SWU.
right after when the Anzellan is walking away from IG-12, and he says, "Bad baby, no squeezy," and then you can hear faintly him say, "I'm out, mother effer." Someone posted this on Twitter. I'm like, there's no way this is real. I have to go to Disney Plus and verify this is not real. Guess what? It's not. And it's very clearly in there.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
Somebody, Shirley Henderson or somebody, somebody in the sound crew was playing games here. This is shenanigans. It's in there. I swear, once you hear it, you will never unhear it.
Oh my gosh, this is how they brought Sam Jackson back.
He secretly voiced.
This is not what I was expecting.
Mace is Babu. That's it. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Waited for that purple saber to just ignite.
Yeah. Later on, we see that Grogu tries to make off with a Melo-run fruit. That was made famous by Star Wars Rebels, and we just a couple episodes ago we got Captain Melo-run himself in the Mandalorian. So there you go. There's your connection.
Wow.
And okay, so Jesse actually alerted me to this like 5 minutes before we went live. Apparently there was a Breaking Bad reunion in this episode that I was not aware of. So obviously we've got Giancarlo Esposito, who played Gus Fring, also Moff Gideon in this show. And then we have the actor named Charles Baker, who played Skinny Pete in Breaking Bad. And also he plays the pirate Mandos, I'm calling him. He's the one when they first arrive, he's the guy on the right that says, "Oh, our weapons in your service, Lady Bo-Katan."
Yeah.
So that guy. So okay, so I have one more thing, and it's in another segment, a segment within a segment that I like to call Ben's Disconnection Corner. And the corner is spelled with a K, just to be hip and weird, and make it a little off-putting.
There's one thing
Ben's
you know, Ben,
Disconnection Corner.
gotta be hip. That is,
it's the best thing I could come up with for a blooper section, basically, because I found another mistake in this episode. Mandalorian has been slipping up lately, and I'm here to keep him in line. So if you watch the first scene where Moff Gideon communes with Kane in the alleyway via hologram, hologram first comes up. You see Moff Gideon. He has his hands just kind of clasped in front of him at his waist. And then when it switches to him on Mandalore, he is holding the holoprojector in his hand.
Oh Oh my god.
So it's just like,
You are
when did he?
so right.
When did he pitch? How does this work? This happens a lot in Star Wars, like the whole idea of just like you have giant Snoke and you have like tiny, is he looking at tiny versions of Hux and Kylo? Like, how does this work? Hologram technology does not, the eye lines just don't add up a lot of times.
Man.
Wow, that's a good catch. Wow.
But that's it. That's all. And that's we're
good.
closing out the show, right? This is what we do after the show. We close out the show. We don't do anything else, right? We don't have anything else to talk about.
That's right. So that was another segment of
Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben's Connection Corner is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
And for the record, if anybody else comes up with any kind of connections, including me, keep it to yourself. The Connection Corner has been closed.
Only open once a week for 5 minutes.
You had your chance. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Oh my god.
The red doors. You didn't catch the red doors? I was waiting for you to mention that.
What red
The
doors?
red door, dude. Come on, man. So when in Moff's like office lair, whatever the hell that is, and the red doors open up, and you got the guys either side of him, and he's like walking down the corridor to the meeting, and you got the red laser doors, just like in Phantom Menace.
I was picturing like a literal door, like a door and a hinge,
like,
a red door. I'm like, there was no red door. What are you talking about?
Laser
gates.
Is that the
yes? That's the
term?
proper term. Laser gate.
like in Phantom Menace when like
Okay.
Obi-Wan's
Well,
running.
those
to
were red.
Qui-Gon.
Okay, I guess those were red. I thought they were like orange.
What?
Oh, so it's like the exact same thing, but it's a slightly different shade. And you're like,
It's
no,
not.
that's not related.
You have to make a direct
That's
connection.
not
Pretty
the
sure
same.
red and orange have been the same color for most of human history, and then someone like got fun with paint and was like, "No, we're gonna make a new color."
You're gonna come to me with a laser gate and say it's a connection. Get out of here.
How is it? I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this in Ben's Connection Corner. This is the biggest connection I've ever seen in Star Wars. Oh my god. What?
The doors
Whatever.
connect. I'll give you that.
Whatever.
Oh my god. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Anyway.
Now that we've satisfied our audience of one person who requested this earlier, you're welcome. Let's talk about our opening thoughts, our initial impressions of Spies in Disguise. What is this called?
Spies in Disguise?
The Mandalorian, Chapter 23, Spies in Disguise.
What kind of
Starring Will
Scooby-Doo
Smith
ass
and Tom
weed
Holland.
episode is that?
The Spies. So, Ben, let's start with you.
Oh man, this was a hell of an episode. Of course, I really liked it a lot better than last week's episode. Of course, that's not saying much. I think that honestly, this episode was so good, it actually made me appreciate last episode more. Just because it was just a very heavy episode. It took a little while to get going, I will admit, but some great character moments, obviously some great action and great plot developments I think we've all been waiting for. And just freaking finally Moff Gideon shows up, which is just like, why does he always wait till like the second to last episode to show up in this dang show? Where has he been all this time? But yeah, it's great to have Moff Gideon back. It's great to have the plot moving forward. The only thing that sucks about this is we have to wait close to a week for the next episode, and then it will probably inevitably not resolve everything because there's too much stuff to resolve, and then we'll be left with another just awful but great cliffhanger of an episode next week probably. But overall, this was, incredible episode all around.
Awesome. And Hannah, what are your initial impressions?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it was a really cool pacing. I think I like the quiet moments. There was some fantastic dialogue. Oh my god, some like beautifully written dialogue in moments in here. With some of the Mandos, with Bo. I love there was quiet, but then there was heightened moments. The action pieces were really good. I think they were very well choreographed. It wasn't just like they shot 2 guys and then kept running. It was full on. It was like a minute and a half, 2-minute like action scene of just like Mandos being Mandos. And I think that's what a lot of people, and that's what I've been wanting from a Mandalorian show for a long time. Just some cool, like real, just simple action, which I really loved. And some very interesting story elements in here. Like this episode is what I think were my expectations for season 3. Like in this episode were my expectations of like going to Mandalore, like figuring out who's going to be in charge and like facing a villain that's on Mandalore. Like that's kind of what I expected from this season. That's what I felt like I got in this episode. So I'm pretty satisfied with this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that it took so long for them to get to this point, because there was so much setup for this kind of at the end of last season. You kind of almost expected them to jump right into it this season, but they definitely took they had a lot of side quests. They had a lot of moments where they kind of went off and developed some other characters or some other situations before coming back to this main thing. And it was a bit of a windy road to get to this point. I still enjoyed it. I still personally like where they veered off, but it is a bit surprising that they choose to pace things that way. But now that they've gotten here, I agree. Like this is kind of where everything's been leading up to. It's a culmination of a lot of things. And this episode was really, really great. And I'm just excited because there's so many heir to the Empire characters descending upon this era that we are one step closer to the greatest moment in the history of Star Wars, which is live action Mara Jade. We're one step closer. We're one step closer.
One step closer. That's how we gauge how the Star Wars shows are doing.
I mean, we might need to have a few other random characters from Heir to the Empire show up. We might need some Isilamiri with Thrawn first.
Yeah.
We might need Luuk to show up.
Luuk. Oh my god.
We might need. There might be a few other ones, but the road to Mara Jade, we're one step further with Pelion on the road to Mara Jade.
On the way.
Yeah, this is the way. So super excited for that. So yeah, I was super stoked to see Pelion. Like that was a big moment, because it's like Thrawn, he had his moment when he showed up in Star Wars Rebels. Like that was the big moment where Thrawn came into the show canon. And we've, of course, been anticipating him being in live action for a while. We'll probably talk about it a bit later, but we actually kind of sort of saw him in live action already in promotional material for something else. So that kind of reveal has happened. So Pelion was big because that's something we weren't expecting. That's something we didn't know would happen. So that was really cool. And then I just love how the one thing that I've been waiting for the show to do more of is to connect the trilogies together, the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, because this show takes place so much closer to the original trilogy. It's done a lot to kind of be a sequel to it, but it hasn't done as much to really start setting up the sequels. So seeing things like the Praetorian Guards in this episode was really cool, because it starts, connecting these two things together a little bit more as you start to see things that are more sequel looking things as opposed to original trilogy looking things in the Imperial remnants. And as you see that transition from the Empire to the First Order, this is one of the big steps in that transition. So this was a great episode for me. I thought it was pretty awesome. But let's start talking about some of the specifics. Let's talk about some stuff that went down on Navarro towards the beginning of the episode. Grogu gets a mecha suit, and we get IG-11 back in a way we were not expecting. What is going on with that?
Can I just say, I read some spoilers a few weeks, if not months ago. I think it may have even been before The Mandalorian was coming out. And one of those spoilers talked about Grogu getting a mech suit. And I'm like, this is obviously fake. This is obviously BS. I don't have to re-listen to this. But then the season went on, and I was like, and then I saw General Grievous's second cousin on the Mandalorian on the Mines of Mandalore. That dude that attacks Din, and I was like, "Oh, is this that bit, or did someone like get their wires crossed and they saw this alien with a mech suit? They think they connected to Grogu." And then I see this episode, and I'm like, somebody out there knew what they were talking about, or just had the best guess of a lifetime to get this right.
Oh my god.
And on paper, yes, it does sound absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And really, in reality, it is absurd and ridiculous. But the execution of it, I think, more than makes up for it. And I don't think this is the new thing for Grogu. I imagine it'll probably get like destroyed again. Probably IG-12 will probably get destroyed in the next episode, but not before Grogu just to do something really epic with it, and just like the humor, and added another, I think, brought something to the episode for Grogu. Because, obviously, why is he in this season? He could have, a lot of people have made the argument that he could have just sat this one out. He could have just gone off and stayed with Luke. I think this episode proves that he has a vital aspect of the show. He has a very great moment on the barge where he stops Axe Woves and Paz Vizsla from fighting. It's great, heartfelt moment, but also just a lot of such good humor, just giving him a voice. He's literally being able to letting him talk, and he loved it. He loved to talk. He talked constantly.
Absolutely, yeah. I think as much as I love the idea of this, I did I was just even talking about it with my brother, and my brother's a bit more of a casual Star Wars fan, and he was saying, "Oh, I loved that. Like, I was knee slapping, laughing when that happened. I thought it was awesome." But I don't know. Maybe it's, but I had such a different experience with it. I was like, kind of, oh yeah, he's got a suit now. Okay, now we can walk faster. Like, I don't know. I think maybe I'm starting to be in that camp of just like the Grogu bit is overdone. I think because we aren't like, it's not that I don't like Grogu. I like Grogu, but it's like he isn't pertinent to the story. He isn't. It's not critical, or even like, I don't know, to me it's not even interesting. It's just like, oh yeah, he's been around every one of these episodes, and then this one he got a suit. So it's like when he got it, I was like, oh yeah, that's okay, that's like makes it easier. But yeah, I don't know, I was a little underwhelmed by it. I didn't even have it like a reaction to it. That's right, because my brother said, oh, it wasn't in your reaction video, that like when Grogu got in the suit. I was like, yeah, well, there was nothing to react to. I just sat there and just went, oh. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too negative about it, but I was just like, I just literally had no response to it. I was like, okay, he can walk faster now. That's good.
Yeah, I think Grogu is very much the BB-8 or like the C-3PO of this show. And he's there to be funny. He's there to kind of exist within, to kind of lighten things up a little bit. And I can see that being a bit of a flaw. Like you did feel like there were some big Grogu moments earlier on in the first two seasons where, like, he actually accomplished something, and he did to a great extent earlier in the season too. Like in the episode, in the Mines of Mandalore episode, like Grogu did save Din. So he had utility.
That was good.
He had utility there. So I agree. I think the utility in this episode was more just a setup. Like they were setting up the fact that he has now this suit thing, and it was mainly there just for humor and rather than plot. And I get that frustration. So I hope that maybe in the next episode that there's something that he does with the IG suit that like he couldn't have done without it, that like saves somebody or does something important like that would kind of make it have more meaning. But I think overall, I think it's character development for Grogu. I think they're trying to show that despite the fact that he doesn't talk, that he definitely is like matured to a pretty high level of intelligence. Like this season, you have Grogu off on his own, navigating a starship to go get help. And that was really big. and now you have him operating the suit, and we learn that he can communicate, he can talk, he just can't verbalize, but he can understand what people say and he can respond to it given the tools to do that. So I think if anything, it's just character development to just kind of explain where he's at on a maturity level, so that maybe when some things happen further on, you kind of view him as less of a baby and more as like kind of a kid character at this point. Because earlier in the season, he was very much just like cargo. He was like a baby that needed to be protected. And now I think he's starting to become more of a character with agency. And I think that maybe one of the biggest moments in this episode for him was just showing that he definitely has agency, like his ability to say yes or no through the suit. Definitely show, and his ability to then actually go kind of where he wants through the suit really shows that he has a level of agency that we didn't even realize he fully had before. So I think that's kind of the deeper meaning behind writing it, but it's still very subtle. It's still not like as big as like other characters and what they had to do. So it kind of it by comparison, it seems like it's something that kind of gets left out or left behind. And I get that balance. It feels imbalanced that way.
Yeah, I mean, you essentially you have a character, one of the leads. I mean, one of the two through line characters throughout this whole series. One of them cannot speak, or at least up until this episode, still can't really speak, but can say something and can be more expressive through the suit. But when you have a character that can't speak, a la other characters, the same line, BB-8, R2-D2, whatever else, the crux of that, and they tend to lean into, how much can you do that with that dramatically from a production and a writing standpoint. It more or less goes further into, humor and stuff like that, which is a huge part of Star Wars. And humor is very subjective, as we know. I do not in the slightest mind the Poe Dameron's prank call in The Last Jedi. Okay, I don't mind it at all. But some people hate it.
Yeah.
Some people hate it. Some people maybe on this show or have been on this show. But that's just the way it is. It's just that's how it works. So yeah, it's I personally I think the suit could get old really quick. That's kind of what I'm saying. That like I don't think it's going to be around next season. But I think
I agree,
because otherwise from a writing perspective, they needed Grogu to go to Mandalore. They can't just like, this is the Baby Yoda show. They can't like, oh, stay with the ship, Grogu. Don't do anything the entire episode, the entire last 2 episodes.
don't press any buttons.
And like, he's not just gonna, Din's not still in the thing of everywhere he goes, I go, or whatever else. Give him a reason to go down there and have a part to play in the plot and characters, and also do the inverse. Now we've had I think Grogu will have a lot to do with the saving of Din, as opposed to last couple seasons where Din saved Grogu.
Yeah, I can definitely I definitely agree with your perspective of the suit not surviving. I suspect that it will probably, like, there'll be a massive moment where like he gets shot and everyone thinks Grogu is dead, but then he the IG unit is like down, but like Grogu gets out and he's like fine. I definitely think it's probably gonna last only one episode.
I want to. There's some one thing that I fully expect to happen, but I don't want to say it because I 100% expect it to happen, and I want people to be surprised when it does happen. So I'm just not gonna say it, okay?
Okay.
And I'll save it for next week. But I feel like there's something there that they can't pass it up. They're gonna have to do it with Grogu now that he has hands.
Oh. Yeah, I know.
Grab stuff. He can grab stuff and pick up things and wield weapons.
Oh.
But the ratio is so bad. How could he lift it?
Oh.
We're talking about the same thing.
I've said too much. We'll talk about it next week.
That's so good. That's so good.
People listening to this like, what? What?
Oh my gosh.
We'll find it next week. We'll talk about it next week when it happens.
That's interesting because yeah, there's still some debate about that. So, oh. Pulling some people in here. Yeah, that works. That fits.
How long do we get IG-12 with Grogu cosplay at Celebration, like a big
Oh, that's gonna be
I also
that'd be awesome.
love that someone pointed out that basically Grogu riding in the bag on the front of IG-11 in the last episode of Mandalorian season 1 was basically foreshadowing this.
Yes, I did think that.
It's
Yeah,
true.
good stuff.
Fascinating.
Anyway, what else happened? This is like only one.
All right,
plot
so
point.
yes, transition. So I'm forgetting the order that things happened in.
We got
but
Imperial's First Order dudes.
Let's talk.
And then
Yeah,
we
let's
got,
talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Imperials. Let's talk about the Shadow Council.
The Shadow Council. That's
Yes.
Yes.
Now this was cool because we've had a lack of, we talked about it off the top how, Moff Gideon seems to kind of appear towards the end of seasons. It's definitely a pattern at this point. And we've had a lack of high profile Imperials in the season so far. It's really been about just the internal affairs of the Mandalorians and what's going on with the New Republic. And then the major antagonists have been the pirates. There really hasn't been a lot of Imperial action in the season so far. And they finally have given it to us. They finally kind of pulled back the curtain and showed us what's going on with the Imperial remnants and their political structure, which was absolutely fascinating. And I think it was like a really big moment, after only hearing about Thrawn through Ahsoka's search of Thrawn, in her Backdoor Pilot episode. It was really fascinating to hear that they're all mobilizing in anticipation of Thrawn's return. Like that was a big moment. So yeah, I thought that scene was really fascinating. And surprised it took so long to get to it. Surprised that it wasn't until the second to last episode of the season that we got this.
Yeah, and I mean, this scene's great on so many levels. It pays off so much from the last couple seasons. I mean, going back to season 1 of having Moff Gideon and having the client and all that stuff, and knowing that there's something bigger going on in the galaxy. There's isn't just a one-off Imperial remnant. There's something going on. Then getting to the Believer, so a scene that I keep going back to, keep thinking about just that whole monologue of that guy going like, we're working on all this stuff, the Empire, and we're making Burnin Khan just pale in comparison, and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, the Empire is rebuilding. We keep seeing these signs of the Empire coming back. And now we're seeing basically the Empire never went away. Like this is, and also just the idea that there really is no difference between the Empire and the First Order. Like you have people that are left over from the Empire and also the founders of the First Order at this Shadow Council. It's really fascinating to see where this goes. My only question is, how does Palpatine figure into all this? Mm-hmm. Are these people working completely on their own? What is their opinion of Palpatine? Are they just forgotten all about Palpatine? Is this purely just, hey, we're just going to elect a new emperor and that's that? Is this a manipulation of Palpatine? Does Palpatine have any plans for this? Does Palpatine even care? Is he just working on his final order fleet out on Exegol and he doesn't care about what these idiots do? I'm very curious how this all fits in with, obviously the Empire leads to the First Order. How does that interface with the Final Order? All this kind of stuff. I mean, it's great that we're getting this stuff. I love that we are getting the origins of the First Order. We are getting to a point now where it's happening, and this is all unfolding in front of our eyes. And they have the foresight now of those movies have played. We know where this is going. Now we can actually tell the story, and there's no plot holes.
Yeah. So let's see. I want to bring up a few super chats that Joel had first, and then let's talk about this because there's a lot here.
We could spend all night on this scene for the record.
I really want to dissect this and pick people's brains about this because there's some holes here in canon that I don't even know about, especially stuff that was in the books. But Joel did say, he's excited that Pelion was talking to Brendel Hux because it's a Legends character talking to a paper cannon character,
I didn't even think about that. That's
which is
really
kind of
cool.
cool. And then more directly to what we were talking about, Joel thinks that Project Necromancy is more Snoke related than Palpatine related. The warlords don't act like they know Palpatine is alive. Plus, by this point, Palpatine is just having out on Exegol by
Hanging
now.
out, maybe?
Heading out,
Hanging out,
yes. Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah.
So
Just hanging
okay.
around.
So yeah, okay. Okay. This is what I know. Now I'm going to see what y'all know if you know more than me. Okay.
Throw it at us.
So the what I know, and this is mainly from watching the movies, because that's where most of my canon comes from, is that at some point, all of the remnants of the Imperials and then some new people all come together and create the First Order, and the supreme leader of the First Order is Snoke, and then his like right hand guy, his Darth Vader like character enforcing everything is Kylo Ren, and that's kind of that's what I know. And then at some point, it is revealed to everyone that it was Palpatine all along, and Palpatine's been hiding out on Exegol, has this massive fleet, and has been orchestrating everything, and has been puppeteering Snoke. That's pretty much all I know. So the question is, like, how the thing that I'm missing is how we got from a bunch of Imperial warlord remnants that all kind of working together, sometimes fighting, sometimes working together, maybe Thrawn being one of them and coming in, but then being out of the picture by the time the sequels happened. How we got from that to the First Order being organized and Snoke emerging, and then everybody kind of making Snoke the new emperor. Like, I don't know how we got from that one point to the other point, and I don't know how much has even been said about this in books and comics and source books. All I know is just we went from one to the other, and I don't know how the dots connect here.
Well, my bet, like, what I kind of infer of the plan here is that, like, Palpatine is still in so much control here, and he's made a calculated decision to be like, there has to be a villain in, like, the galaxy. There has to be something going wrong in the galaxy, so I can have time to build up Exegol, and I can have time to finish whatever I'm doing. So I feel like Thrawn is the biggest villain for the next 20 years after Return of the Jedi. And he thinks that even. He thinks he is Palpatine, essentially, in terms of his largeness and scale. And then the Moff Gideons and the, maybe probably more of the Shadow Council think they are top dog. Like, I think they are top, they're the most powerful in that capacity and in on that side of the card, the coin, the card. But I don't know what I'm saying here. But Ben, chime in.
No, I'm trying to put the pieces together too, because I have read a lot of the books, and I've even watched some, because you have the post Return of the Jedi era is informed by obviously the Aftermath trilogy and some of the comics, Battlefront 2. And there's a lot of different stuff. There's a lot happening in this. I mean, I know that, like, you have the year after Return of the Jedi, which is about at the Battle of Jakku, which kind of ends that, about 4 years, give or take, depending on the Mandalorian timeline, which is in flux now because Favreau threw a wrench in the gears by saying that several years have passed since the season 1 of the Mandalorian. So we really don't know what's going on there. But this is supposed to be set 5 years after Return of the Jedi. 1 year after Return of the Jedi, we have the Battle of Jakku. We have the whole thing with Gallius Rax going into Jakku to form up what's left of the Empire, but it was really just a ruse, and it was Operation Cinder, basically trying to a contingency plan by Palpatine to ultimately destroy what was left of the Empire. But how does that fit in? Because obviously a good portion of the Empire is still around and is trying to reform into something that can actually, face the New Republic. And what is the end playing game here? I'm curious. What I'm curious about is the future. And maybe I think a lot of Chris's questions can and should be answered by the Mandalorian or by the Mandoverse, because I think they have a golden opportunity to not fill fill plot holes, because there is a lot going on here, and I don't think it's been haphazardly done. I think it's just been like we came through a period of time when the sequels were not cemented. We didn't have the ending of Rise of Skywalker. We didn't even have The Last Jedi. We didn't have The Force Awakens. We didn't have these cemented points in history where we were building to. It was just, okay, stuff happens, and eventually the Empire comes back as the First Order. Now the Mandalorian is working with an end game. And so what I'm curious about is, where does the end game go? How can you have the Empire, then you have the Empire falls, a resurgent Empire with Thrawn, and then somehow that falls apart, and then it comes back as the First Order, and then it comes back as the Final Order. You have like these resurgences of empires. How does that figure into the story? How do you actually make that make sense from a purely writing perspective, purely story perspective, which is what I'm curious about. But I'm assuming, I don't know, I'm assuming that the Mandalorian will answer that question. Because you could have had any villains in this time period. You could have gotten rid of the Empire, but they've chosen the Empire to be yet again the Empire. And as much as I'm kind of rolling my eyes at the idea of like, oh, and again, the Empire is back again. We have another resurgent Empire before the Final Order comes back. Now they can actually answer these questions and actually fill in the gaps and actually create a story that's cohesive with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting about this is the thing that I keep thinking about when I see characters like Thrawn and Pelion, and to an extent, when I saw characters like Ben Solo in the sequel trilogy, is it reminds me of how comic book series and movies bring in characters from comic books and then just tell new stories with those characters. Like a lot of the stories in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Disney Plus series, those aren't storylines that are verbatim the storylines from comic books. They're often just interpretations of characters from comic books. And I think the Star Wars universe very much is like that too, where you have the source material of the legends, and then they take some of the characters and pick them out and then make new stories and plots with those characters in the cinematic and streaming universe. So the thing is interesting is the kind of some of the core elements of what Star Wars was in Legends still exists, and they're still sourcing a lot of those elements, which is really interesting to me. But then there's some major twists that have happened that almost have kind of confused things, because it was cohesive. Like you had Thrawn be the first major threat after Return of the Jedi in Legends. And then after that threat was defeated, came the next generation of Skywalkers and Solos. And that's where you had Jaina and Jason and Ben come in, and Anakin. But they weren't fighting Palpatine, and they weren't fighting anyone like Snoke. But some of those familial relationships were kind of the same. Some of the same dynamics that were going on with Rey and Ben and the original trilogy characters. And so I think what's interesting is now that they're bringing Thrawn in kind of a similar capacity to what he had in Legends as the next big leader of the Imperial forces after Palpatine, they can kind of almost pass things through the same way that Legends did, where for a while Thrawn can be the big main villain like he was in the Heir to the Empire series. But then after that, someone's going to defeat him. He's going to go away. And then it's going to be this family drama again with the Skywalkers and the Solos being central to everything. So the only thing that is a wild card, a wrench being thrown into this whole thing is this Palpatine returns and he has his puppet Snoke as like the big antagonist of everything, in addition to the conflict within Ben Solo. So it's kind of, that's why it's confusing to me, because it's like, I know how this goes. I know how this was structured. It made sense. Now there's a piece of it that's different. So now all of it doesn't make sense. All of it's confusing. And now I just want to see like how they're going to make it make sense. Because if it weren't for Snoke and it weren't for Palpatine's return, they could just follow the overall structure of the development of the New Republic from the Thrawn trilogy to the New Jedi Order series and Fate of the Jedi and all of that stuff. But now they can't do that. So I'm like, how are they going to do that? They have to rewrite things. They have to take what happened with Thrawn and Jorah Sabagavat, I can't say it, and they have to somehow write Snoke into that plot, which is just, I don't know. I'm just waiting, like, how are they going to do this? I don't know.
But as Joel points out, like, Palpatine did return in the EU too.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't as he didn't wait 30 years.
Dark Empire.
But you know, it did happen. So I mean, you could make the argument that, you know, the sequels pulled stuff from the EU, and this whole era really can't help but be colored by what came before, what was already established, what people really assumed for years and years and years was kind of the canon real storyline of, okay, this is what happened after Return of the Jedi. Now we're getting the real story. But there's a lot of moving pieces, and just having Paleon standing there, just having that character that was so central to the Heir to the Empire trilogy and that whole era. That character here just is a huge sign of just like, yeah, it's not the same, but also it kind of is.
Yeah. So the lore pieces are just really fascinating. Joel's theory is that the Metaverse will see the end of these warlord remnants, and Hux's faction in the unknown regions will be the last one standing and become the First Order. That makes sense. The Final Order fleet and Exegol have been with Palpatine since before Return of the Jedi, maybe earlier. He's been building this fleet for decades. Palpatine's clone son was 10 by this time too. That makes sense. And then Snoke is Sabaoth. That is how it will go. He'll be the clone Thrawn works with, but will live once Thrawn is defeated, and thus be the true heir to the Empire. I mean, yeah, that's what I expect them to do, is to kind of take that Mount Tantus Sabaoth plot and then supplant it with the Snoke plot, because it's like whenever we seem to come across the concept of cloning in the Disney Plus shows, it tends to look like the type of cloning that you see on Exegol.
Right.
Like the technology, like the chambers looks similar. And I think I don't think that's not unique to the sequels. I think we saw those in Force Unleashed.
Right, there's a lot of tanks very similar to that.
So it's not like, you know, technically speaking, all of it could just be referencing previous Legends material and doesn't have to reference each other. But I think that it doesn't make sense to. I think that knowing that's what it looks like on Exegol, I think it would not make sense to show that in other things in Star Wars and not have it be connected to Exegol in some way.
Yeah,
So
I think Filoni's just gonna be like, yeah, we were referencing the Force Unleashed too. Yeah, if you look closely, those clones in that tank look like Sam Witwer. Yeah, it's Starkiller.
Oh my gosh. So so yeah, I think that makes the most sense, that they're kind of turning the story on its head a little bit, where the original idea was Palpatine came back in Dark Empire. Am I saying that right? That it was Dark Empire that he came back in?
Right. That is correct.
Yeah. I've never read the full thing. I've just
Me neither.
seen parts of it and heard about it and Wikipedia hopped and all that stuff. But yeah, so he came back, Thrawn defeats him, then Thrawn's the big baddie, and then he helps make Joruus, and then Joruus is defeated, and then Thrawn is defeated. And then we move on, almost like it's just there's no real connection between that and the Yuuzhan Vog and future villains and Jason Solo and all that stuff future. So now it's kind of reversed where like Thrawn's first and then he creates Snoke, apparently. That seems to be where it's going. And then Palpatine returns after that, after Thrawn is defeated, but then the clone character continues on all the way through almost to the end of Palpatine's story. So it's like they've taken those three elements of Thrawn, the Emperor, and the clone and just reversed the order in which they're defeated in completely. So instead of it being Palpatine defeated first, then the clone being defeated, then Thrawn, it's going to be the opposite. Thrawn will be defeated first, then the clone, then the Emperor. So
yeah, I just appreciate that Mandalorian is committed to this. They're committed to telling the story, and we are going to maybe get some definitive answers. We're already getting some definitive answers about this, but tying it in a way that makes sense. It's not just shoehorning the Imperial story into a Mandalorian story. I love that this episode starts with these people that used to oppress the galaxy being fearful. They are afraid. Their motivation is fear. They are afraid of the Mandalorians. They know what Bo-Katan says later in the episode. That
what was that? Was so
I was
fun.
trying
I was
to
like,
ignore it.
this is the part of the speech you're doing. Oh wow,
there's
I
a
mean, it's
reason
possible.
why I have a Star Wars.
That's terrifying.
Why I have a Star Wars ringtone.
Because you like Star
part of the
Wars?
show.
What's the
It's
reason?
part of the show.
Yes.
Part of the show. What was I saying?
So I get real quick.
Oh, I don't know.
While you're
I'm
remembering,
sure it was good though.
while you're remembering, Joel was saying that that I guess the Palpatine came back after the Thrawn books. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. But I wasn't sure what order that happened.
I
in
forget
because
the
I never
order
connected
sometimes
the two.
too.
I never connected the two together. Like I never understood how the two stories had anything to do with each other. So
I
it's
just know
easy to
Thrawn. I
not-
just know like Thrawn was first real world. Like that was obviously the first thing that was
E
released. Like really big EU wise.
Yeah.
What?
But
Sorry, you finish your point, Ben. I'm gonna like switch it up.
no, all I'm saying, I think all I was trying to say was just like it's interesting that the Empire's motivation here is fear. That they are absolutely terrified, and it's what Bo-Katan says later in the episode that that the Mandalorians are very powerful. No one can defeat them except themselves. And that's going to play a big part in this, and that's the reason they were wiped out to begin with, because they stood in opposition of the Empire, and that's the reason everything in this season has been happening the way it has been, because they've been trying to stamp the Empire, the Mandalorians out again.
Yeah.
One of my favorite recurring concepts in Star Wars is that often the main majority of villains aren't the biggest villain, but they think they are. Like the Separatists, what we've got now, like there's so many examples, like where it's like they think like they're evil, they're power hungry, they're doing it so better. But there's, even like the Inquisitors with like Vader, like there's always someone that's like actually better than them and actually over them, that can always kind of snuff them out. Like I really enjoyed the whole plot point of like the Separatists was like functioned for years and years, and then the second that Palpatine needed that to happen in his plan, killed them all. Like that's hilarious. Like they tried so hard for so long.
A bunch of people
Like-
died. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I really like that concept, and I like if that's revisited here. Now, I'm switching up a little bit. I don't know if this is controversial or not. But one thing I would actually really enjoy, and I don't know how, but what was the planet that or moon or whatever where Plagueis's lab was on, or like lair, his little hideout in the Plagueis novel? He like all these test stuff was on a certain planet, and it did get destroyed. I believe. Do you know what planet that was? What was
I
it
have
called?
no idea.
Not remember
I'm
the
I'm
name of it.
Wikipediaing it right now.
Jeff,
Somebody
someone's gotta
knows.
know.
But Matt
Like-
knows.
Like if
Joel probably knows.
Mandalore can get totally bombed and like we're back there, like how cool would it be with all these cloning ideas and discovery of like how to redo life and make life survive longer than it should? Like I would love some sort of I don't know, just connection to or exploration of like Plagueis. I don't think I want Plagueis to like, oh, he did survive, because I think that'll undo the whole like journey of how Palpatine's where he's at. But it's like I want some connection to that. I want some kind of, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like we could even go back to his the ruins of his lab, and like that's where they found there was one vector intact of like something.
So that's the subtraction from Star Wars. Like the big addition to Star Wars is Snoke. That's the thing that didn't exist before that has been added, and it's all these little pieces of Snoke everywhere, and all these stories that we think we still don't know how many of them are actually leading to Snoke and how many of them are misdirection and just made to make us think it's Snoke, but it's not. And so the big subtraction for Star Wars is Plagueis. Like that's the big thing that was a huge part of Star Wars lore that all of a sudden isn't anymore, because the Plagueis novel isn't canon. And so we're back to that mention of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, which, still could be explained away as Palpatine just manipulating Anakin and none of that being truth.
Reading it so recently though, like I found so little of that book that contradicts current canon. I'm like, why isn't this canon? Yeah, it really doesn't.
And
So
it's the same case with the Obi-Wan book, and I think there might have been was Tarkin the first new like paper canon book, or did that one miss the cut too? I can't remember. But they all came out around the same time. There was a Tarkin book, an Obi-Wan book, and a Plagueis book that came out in like 2012, 2013, right before there were things that were being written but as Disney was buying Star Wars, and then they were published right around that same time. Because Plagueis came out in the beginning of 2012, so it came out right before and so those things of course would have fit really well, because they would have been written around the Clone Wars. They would have been written around the live action show that George Lucas was planning to make, that got then pushed into other projects and video games and things. It would have been written around the sequel trilogy, because George Lucas's plans for the sequels were being formulated at that time. Now, most of those ideas didn't make it in to the final versions, but like he was planning to make those movies as those books were being released. So there wouldn't have been anything contradictory there either. So all of the stuff that existed, the foundation of Star Wars, would have fit with those books really well. And then Disney really hasn't done anything to really contradict Plagueis, because they haven't played around with that time period much. There's been
Acolyte. That's my question with Acolytes. Is it gonna tie things in from Plagueis, or is it gonna do that quite clearly, or not?
Perhaps they could go to the moon of Sojourn, where the Damask fortress.
I'm thinking
that would be, man.
I think if I had to guess what they're gonna do, I think that they're going to do the same thing with Plagueis that they did with Thrawn. I think they are going to bring Plagueis into canon. They're going to turn the story around a little bit, so it's not going to be exactly the same story beat for beat as in Plagueis, as in the James Luceno Plagueis book. but I think their character is coming back, and I think the rough concept of him being Palpatine's master is going to come back. And I think the Acolyte is where that's going to happen in, because I think the Acolyte, from what we've heard, the Acolyte is the story about how could it be that in this utopian society of the High Republic, how could it be that the Sith return and that the Sith gain power? Because we go from the Sith being in hiding to the point where people thought they were extinct. Like the Jedi Council thought that the Sith had been gone for 1,000 years. And so there had not been a single hint of the Sith existing for 1,000 years that got back to the Jedi Council and the Republic. And so how could they go from being in hiding for 1,000 years to then infiltrating the Republic in such a way and infiltrating the Jedi in such a way that by the time we get to the Phantom Menace, we're only 13 years away from the entire thing collapsing? Like by the time that the whispers of the Sith come back and Darth Maul and his master or apprentice, as they do not know yet, is revealed in the Phantom Menace, it only takes about 12, 13 years for the entire takeover to happen and the entire Jedi Order to be wiped out as an institution, and for the Republic to change to the Empire, and for the Sith to control the galaxy. How could that happen? I think that's the point of the Acolyte. The point of the Acolyte, from what I'm hearing being said about it by Leslie Headland and everybody else involved in it, is they're going to explain the behind the scenes of what the Sith did to go from being in hiding to taking over the galaxy and being at the point where they just had to push on a few buttons, make a little war, make some clones, and then boom, it all happens. And so Plagueis has to be a part of it. He has to be a part of that, because you have to think that Palpatine could not have orchestrated every single detail of that himself. Some of that had to have been done by his master, and maybe the master before that as well, who was Tenebrius and the paper cannon.
I say Tenebrous. I say Tenebrous.
Tenebrous, the Bith Sith.
The Bith.
That's
The
what
Sithy
I
Bithy.
think. I think we're going to get to the Acolyte. I think Amandla Stenberg's character will probably be the Acolyte, the titular character. We're going to follow them through this journey. I think maybe the last scene of the last episode is just like that character, the Acolyte, being like, I am the Sith Lord and I'm going to take on an apprentice, and here's this little boy named Ego Damask, and I'm going to train him, and you are thenceforth Darth Plagueis. And that's how it ends.
I don't think so. The reason why I don't think that theory, I don't agree with that.
So polite.
I don't see that.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think that they're respecting the Bane lore. I think the fact that Darth Bane showed up in the Clone Wars, that was a massive moment, because
when did that happen? Oh, the Yoda arc?
Yes.
Was it that one?
I think that's where he showed up.
Yeah, he was voiced by none other than Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill.
The final episode.
Yes.
Of the Clone Wars.
Yes. It's just Darth Bane showing up. Obviously, it was like this odd canonical thing. It wasn't a flashback. It was like his ghost coming back, and it not like in a Force ghost sense, but in like his essence was imparting a message, almost like he had recorded himself and it was playing. I think it was like through a holocron or something of the sorts.
It was like, you're
yeah.
not real. You are
like
not.
There's like a fire pit or something. There was something. He looked into like a bowl of fire.
But okay, so here's the thing. So Darth Bane was the person who created the rule of 2. I wonder about James Mangold's Star Wars movie, because that's supposed to be like the origin of Force users, and perhaps even the origin of the Sith. And so I think if anyone's going to tell Darth Bane's story, it might be in that James Mangold era of Star Wars. But the idea, when you hear in the Phantom Menace the line, always two, there are no more, no less, a master and an apprentice. The fact that Darth Bane, who in Legends was the person who created that, who started that system. The fact that he showed up in the Clone Wars suggested to me that George Lucas was bringing that piece of lore that Darth Bane started that into canon. So what that means...
Actually, can I stop you there really quick?
Yes.
That was created by George Lucas. The idea and the background for Darth Bane, because people think, oh, Darth Bane is a Legends character. Darth Bane was created by George Lucas as part of the background for either the Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith. The whole background of the Rule of Two, all that. George came up with that and then basically gave it to the EU, and they developed it more. And props to them, like coming up with the characters that we know. But that was George's idea. And I think it's something that like people were kind of misreporting it like way back when. It's like, oh, Darth Bane's canon now. No, he was always really canon. It's always been kind of part of the thing. George, in other instances, took from stuff like he took Aayla Secura kind of out of the comics. He took Gwendolyn Voss. There was tons of things. George liked the EU. He took a lot of the ideas. Hated Mara Jade apparently, but liked a lot of other things.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that, because that again, it underscores what I'm saying, which is that's canon. Like Darth Bane is canon. That concept is canon. So anyway, how that relates to what you were saying, Ben, is that Plagueis comes out of the Rule of Two. So the concept of the acolyte is someone that is extraneous to the Rule of Two. Someone's outside the Rule of Two. So that's why, that would be a word to describe what Asajj Ventress is, for example. Asajj Ventress is not a master or an apprentice of the Sith. Right. Asajj Ventress is a Sith acolyte. So what that means is that we're going to have this unbroken line of Sith succession. And another reason why that's important in canon, and this is not, I don't think, George Lucas canon, this is probably like J.J. Abrams canon or who knows. But you have this idea that the master, that the apprentice becomes the master when he kills the master. And then he goes and gets his own apprentice. So that's how the succession happens. You have that new canon idea of when that happens, there's almost like a passing on of the essence of the old master into the apprentice, the new master, which then allows Palpatine to be all of the Sith in almost an Avatar: The Last Airbender like way at the end of the saga. So far. But the thing is about that is, so in order for that succession to happen, and in order for the Rule of Two and Darth Bane and all that stuff to continue, you have to have Plagueis' master be part of that Darth Bane succession. And so whether we see Darth Plagueis' origin story in the Acolyte or whether he just appears as a character, either way, his master is going to be someone whose master all the way down the line was Darth Bane. The Acolyte is going to come in as a apprentice, a non-Sith apprentice, but like an assassin and a hand of the Emperor, somebody like that type character, who's probably going to be working for Plagueis or working for Plagueis' master alongside Plagueis. That's kind of how I expect that to be presented. So the Acolyte will probably lead back to Plagueis. So whoever that character is, if it's Amanda Sandberg or whoever, it probably will lead to this point where us as an audience gets to, through that character, see the inner workings of Plagueis' plan or Plagueis' master's plan or Plagueis and Palpatine's plan. It will not be revealed to the Jedi that are on the present Jedi Council. Whoever finds out about that is dead or is going to be banished somewhere where they can't talk about it, because we can't know about it by the time the Phantom Menace comes in, because that's allegedly, that is the first time people know about it. But that's kind of how I see that going. But it involves Plagueis big time, because we still have to see, in order for there to be an Acolyte, there has to be a Sith. That Sith has to be either Plagueis Palpatine or Plagueis' master, or a combination of those three. And Plagueis, I think, we have no confirmation of this, I think is going to be one of those Sith characters. I think they're going to, because Leslie Headland is such a big fan of the Star Wars lore, I think she is going to take that story of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis of the Wise, and I think she's going to take James Luceno's Plagueis book, and she's going to take elements out of that and give her interpretation of it. in this Disney Plus show. That's what I expect.
Leslie Headland is not going to miss anything. She's gonna have all the details. She's gonna nail this. I can't wait. I can't wait for all the details. Also, how about that Mandalorian, guys? Yeah.
Okay,
We're talking about
so
the Mandalorian.
It's been like 30 minutes.
I can't wait for all the Sith to show up in the Mandalorian.
So let's talk about the Mandalorian. Jesse brings up the Armorer. First episode that had me thinking the Armorer might be up to something. That title might have had multiple meanings. And then it actually brings up a question that was asked a bit ago in our chat by George, who asked, but who are the spies, the titular spies of this episode? I mean, the most obvious answer is it's you know who on course.
Elia Kane.
But are there more than one? Because it's the
lot of
spies.
people-
It's not the spy. Is the
A lot of-
Armorer a spy? What's going on there?
A lot of people are really trying hard. They're grasping desperately to the idea that the Armorer is the secret villain of the entire series. And look, things gotten crazy, especially lately in Mandalorian. I'm not going to rule it out, but I think this specific idea that she is the spy, because people are pointing to, oh, she was there, but then as soon as they went to go find the Forge and the Empire attacked, she was long gone. So that's pretty sus. I don't know if I agree with that. I think if she was working with Gideon, it doesn't make sense that Gideon would one, not know what's going on with the Mandalorians, because wouldn't the Armorer be reporting to him, or wouldn't that lengths? Also, the Armorer had the whole idea to bring Mandalorians together and to work with Bo-Katan and to have that big character changing moment, to work against Moff Gideon. So that doesn't really line up. So I look, I'm not. If the Armorer pulls off her helmet and is like, ha ha ha, you fools, I was the villain the whole time. I will color me surprised, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, rightfully so. Yeah, I don't know who the plural could be. I definitely think there's something. I don't have a strong feeling, but it could be an Woves, whatever his name is. He could. I don't know, I just see too much wrong with what Bo and Mando's trying to do, that he kind of goes behind their backs and says, hey Moff, like, you're a powerful guy, can you help us be better Mandalorians? I don't know. I think could be R5. R5 is still in the ranks of the Mandalorian covert. R5 could be feeding information elsewhere. I don't know who it could be.
Like, who's spying on who, though? Because, you could argue, someone in the Mandalorian group, the recon group, is feeding information to the Imperials, but, they brought a whole fleet to Mandalore. The Mandalorians weren't exactly hiding. It was the Empire who was hiding, and then, the Mandalorians walked into a trap. So, I think the logical thing... I think maybe what the problem is, the Spies wasn't the best title for this episode. It just sounded cool. So here we are.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. It's, yeah, I don't know. I don't have any other guesses. And you might be right that we've just totally, there's been many situations where we've totally overthought something and it's never rectified and never talked about again. We're like, oh, that was just something we all
except for that whole Darksaber situation.
Oh,
except for the thing where they're sitting there going like, oh, but actually technically the robot took it from Din and then Bo-Katan took it from the robot, so technically the robot was ruler of Mandalore for 5 minutes and then Bo-Katan is actually the wielder of the Darksaber. But they would never do that. That's too complicated. It's too out there. It's too weird.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. It is kind of confusing. But I forgot about the title of this episode. I was just like watching it and I'm like taking it for face value and
also,
not even bothering.
Could the spies, like, what is the literal definition of spies? Could the spies be the Shadow Council? Like, they're in the shadows doing shady stuff?
I mean, a spy is someone who like collects intelligence in a covert manner.
Spies. I spy Mandos.
Spies in
It's
disguise.
just the dude with the binocs in that one moment. So.
Yeah. No, that is fascinating. So moving on, we get to a point in the episode after all of this where they finally come back to Mandalore. This was the moment that we've been waiting for like the whole show. Like the Mandalorians returning to Mandalore, the triumphant return to Mandalore. They finally came back and they discovered, and this just keeps boggling my mind. They discovered that there's already Mandalorians on Mandalore. What?
Yeah. Like, oh,
whoops.
We were
They're already
overreacting this
back.
whole time.
They didn't leave. They're just there. And they didn't tell anybody. They just were hanging out. Like, what the heck?
So bad.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know what I felt about this. Like, okay, so this whole sequence of like the Mando pirates, and the sequences we had on on their ship thing there. I always find it funny in Star Wars when we have ships that don't hover. Like even in last season when we had the boat on that like water planet, I was like, why are we in a boat, like a human boat? Like just use a ship that hovers. But anyway, maybe it did. It did actually hover. It just hovered on the surface. Did it?
I guess. I don't know.
I
I
can't even
mean,
remember.
yeah, I think that's the general concept. Well, like what the boat in the Bad Batch? What did that hover, or was that an actual boat?
That's true. That was like, I feel like that was an actual in-water boat.
But this was like
'Cause
a
that's what-
skiff. Like this was like a actual like
Yeah.
something touching something else along on a like just I don't know. Like if I
Yes.
feel like if you have hover technology, why would you ever have wheels or any kind of sliding thing? Like, come on.
That's true. And like I was confused by the sails. I was like, why can't like we have thrusters? It's okay. Like you don't need a sail.
I feel like the sails were just for looks. Like they have no things. Like I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I like the aesthetic of Pirates of the Caribbean, Pirates of the Mandalorians.
It was fun. It was
really cool.
fun. It was fun. But one thing that got me from this sequence, I do really enjoy this episode. It was very fun. But what I was so confused about, that like it was like, oh no, there's a really big monster ahead. What are we gonna do? Go underground immediately. Oh, good. That's where we're going anyway. Don't forget about that monster. We're going down this hole anyway. It's like, what was the point of that whole? There's a monster, and then they were like, "Oh, we're going down here anyway. It's okay. We won't."
I also find it really weird that like, oh, it's a giant monster breaking out of the ground, but it's not the mythosaur. It's another similar monster.
It's like, what is happening?
Because it wasn't until the second time I watched the episode that I realized, oh, that's not the mythosaur.
I was confused too because I was expecting it to be the mythosaur, but then
I'm like,
okay,
this should be a big moment that they're showing up the mythosaur showing, and now they're just running away from it. What's the deal with this? And I'm like, oh, I can barely see that it doesn't have a horn, so I guess it's not the mythosaur.
That's what's confusing me. I'm like, is this the mythosaur? But then I'm like, if it's the mythosaur, they're gonna say it is, and they didn't. So I'm like, okay, it's not. But that's really confusing because it's so similar.
And then why it came from underground, and they were like, you know where we'll be safe? Underground. And then the mythosaur couldn't go underground to find them. Like, I was so confused.
Yeah, that was a bit
such
extra.
a random plot point.
That was a bit extra and unnecessary.
The people that have been living on this planet literally since they left, like 20 years before, like run their boat right into this thing so it can be destroyed conveniently. Like, come on, guys, you know better than that.
Very confusing. So that happened, but really the episode didn't really pick up into its climax until the real moment when they finally got down there and they discovered that there's way more going on Mandalore than anyone could have anticipated. In fact, it is an Imperial remnant base. That was quite the reveal that I was not expecting.
No, I think it was a great reveal. Great. I didn't see it coming at all. It makes total sense now, looking back. And I like the general, like they're just running through a cave and then suddenly it's an Imperial hallway. You're like, wait, what Why is this just a random Imperial hallway in this cave in the mines of Mandalore? And then all of a sudden they're in this gleaming hallway, and it's there. It's just like that's a really good way to do it. Also, I like the new trooper designs. Very another connection for you. It feels like a general progression between Imperial Stormtrooper and First Order Stormtrooper. I like that they're wearing Beskar. I was a bit confused when he said Dark Trooper. I'm like, are these droids or are they people? Like I think they are people, but I thought they were droids there for a bit.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was cool, kind of like it was interesting that the Imperial remnants realized, and Moff Gideon realized that like his big enemy would be the Mandalorians and not the New Republic initially, and so he designed the next phase of stormtroopers to be specifically like Mandalorians and able to fight Mandalorians. And I had this kind of like interesting moment when watching it, because like the origin of the stormtrooper is Mandalorians. Like you look at there's a reason why they look similar. You look at their helmets; they both have the T visor and the helmet, because the Jango Fett had influence clearly on the design of the first clone trooper armor, and now this is just the latest version of the Phase 1 clone trooper armor after many iterations of it. So it's kind of interesting that the Mandalorians are almost fighting themselves. They're fighting their great nephews of characters, which is kind of funny.
I love that.
So
one. Oh, sorry. You still going?
No, I don't know why I said so. I was saying so I could have time to think about what I was going to say next. I had not come into my brain yet.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Well, actually, what Jeff has said in the chat here, I wonder why we didn't see any hints of the Imperial presence in episode 2. That's something, if I got to just remaster this season a little bit, that is actually something I would have done. When Dean was on, we had that episode and like they go there, the weird Grievous droid thing, whatever, they leave. I would have had that they got chased off the planet by TIE fighters. Because start of episode, hang on, am I getting confused? What was episode 2? Was that the Mandalorian episode?
Mine's the
Mandalore,
was
sorry.
Episode 2. Mine's
Episode
the Mandalore.
2.
Episode 2,
Yeah.
do
you get what I'm saying? So it's like reason they leave Mandalore and don't stay there. They get chased off by just random TIE fighters. And then that's how the whole like Bo's, that they chase them back to maybe Bo's place and then they bomb Bo's place or something. I don't know. But then the rest of the season, as the audience, we go, where were those TIE fighters? Where did they come from? Oh my God, how bizarre that there's TIE fighters here. And then imagine getting the reveal now of like, we've got that scene of all of them hanging in the hangar and there's so many there ready to go. And you go, oh, wow, like those two they just went rogue TIE fighters. There's a base here. Like, I don't know. I felt like that would have been cool.
I did think when the armorer says in the previous episode, oh, we're going to retake Mandalore. And I had the thought, retake it from whom? Because
that's a good point. Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, I get you went down there and there was these big burly dudes with the bad hair that came and attacked them, and then you had the General Grievous' second cousin dude, and you know there's stuff on Mandalore like clearly, but like there isn't anything like I think the whole threat of Mandalore and like all that stuff was the fact that it was just two of them down there, or for Din's case it was just one of them. I feel like if you took a bunch of Mandalorians in there, like you could mop it up pretty quick. It didn't feel like, oh, we're taking it over versus, but I guess if you do like put the thought in people's heads that, oh, what if the Empire is on Mandalore, then that ruins the surprise of this episode. That, oh, okay, well, the Empire, we're taking it back from the Empire. The whole idea is that they walk into a trap, and they don't know that the Empire is literally still occupying. The Empire is still occupying Mandalore.
That's so good. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. I do have to say the moment where like we start to get the reveal that there is Empire remnants here, like when they're in the caves, the ruins, the dark rocky caves, and then they turn the corner and then suddenly they're in an Imperial hallway, was so awesome. Because
Yeah.
like I don't know if I'm sure you guys had the same reaction, but I was just like, what? I was like,
Yeah.
where are
I
we?
was
What?
shocked. Not expecting that.
That
I
was
mean, I was
good.
expecting
That was good.
at first I'm like, oh, okay, so this is like an ambush, like that kind of makes sense. But then I'm like, wait, no,
Yeah.
they have a base here. Wait, this is not, huh?
Yeah, I
There's a
like
lot
that. I
being
like
revealed
that.
here, and there was so much revealed in this episode about some things going on that we were not privy to. So that was great. And then Moff Gideon walks out, and okay, is it just me or did he look like he had the Mandalorian armor on?
He absolutely did.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
another thing. People are like, "Oh, he has spikes on his helmet just like the armor. That means they're in league with one another."
Oh.
That's another thing people are pointing out. Again, I don't think so, but great that I love that. I can't help but believe that all goes back to Maul. Like I can't help but believe that all goes back to, or maybe it's just cool to have horns on your helmet. I don't know.
That was an unexplained kind of moment there of like that connection, because like when I saw it, like it was interesting how he was kind of saying like, I'm the future of like all of you, like I took pieces of all of your groups to kind of make myself stronger. And so I thought that was kind of interesting how he sees himself as almost like the successor to the Mandalorians and the successor to the Jedi. Like that was an interesting concept.
I like the idea that we got more into his psyche, and I like the fact that this is kind of Moff Gideon more so than ever staking his claim on Mandalore. That he's not just this warlord out for power. He like has this, for lack of a better term, obsession with subjugating the Mandalorians and taking control of Mandalore and putting them down. I like that a lot. I like the fact that he's kind of obsessed with like, yeah, I want the Darksaber because I'm the ruler of Mandalore and you submit. And also I loved Bo-Katan's speech explaining how the Might of 1,000 Tears went down, and the fact that she surrendered the Darksaber. There wasn't a fight. She surrendered it just to stave off the Imperial attack and try to save everyone. I think that's a great story beat. I think it's a great moment for Bo-Katan, on top of several moments on that ship that were really great. Not to go back too far, but I just like that wrinkle in it before Moff finally shows up again.
Yeah.
To cement him as he is the bad guy. He's out. There's a reason he's in the stories, because he's out for Mandalorian blood.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I thought that was some cool exposition as well. This episode did a really good job of balancing action with exposition, with revelations of things, and there was a lot happening, and a lot that they've been kind of saving. And it makes you wonder why it kind of was all jam-packed here when maybe this could have been revealed. Some of these things could have been revealed earlier in episodes that we thought were kind of more slow or disconnected to the plot. But this is definitely, you can tell they're coming up to the big grand finale moment where like everything happens. But this isn't the big finale. This isn't the climax. Like most of the Mandalorians and Grogu get away except for one, and there was the big sacrifice moment at the end of the episode, and that was
saw it coming from a mile away. Didn't make it any easier.
Yeah.
Poor old Paz, but man, what a way to go out! What a way
Rest
to go
in
out.
Paz. Rest in Paz.
Paz literally means peace.
Wow.
There you go. Boom, boom.
But yeah, who else thinks that Din is going to have his helmet forcibly taken off next episode?
I thought it was going to happen this episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to. Yeah. I was like, holy, they're going to take it off. I went in further. I thought he was going to die this episode. I was like bracing. I was like, Din's about to die. Like,
And now Brendan Wayne is on Instagram going like, "Oh, this episode's really sad. This next episode is going to break you." I'm like, "What are you talking about? How dare you?"
There's a lot of characters that are still alive. I will say that much. Not a lot of deaths this season.
And then Rick Famuyiwa is out there like, well, the Mandalorian doesn't just mean Din Djarin. It can mean a lot of different characters. I'm like, no, don't do this to us.
Man.
Like, I'm okay with other Mandalorians, but don't kill him.
I actually do have an issue with that because I feel like his arc hasn't come to this like conclusive point of anything. Whereas we talk about Tech's death. He had quite a big development through season 2. Lots of like learning and hardships and confrontations, and you have all these things happen. And we all knew he was going to die because it came to this kind of conclusive point. He's kind of, he had all these realizations, and he's like, yep, continuing on, I'm going to like do all these great things. And then that's where it felt natural. It's like, oh, he might die because his character arc is like really well like shaped. And then, but my issue is if they kill off Din here, like I really don't feel like they've like season 3, like if I had to, that's probably one of my criticisms, and I think a lot of people have mentioned this. I love Bo-Katan. I love even like the armor and the covert and all those kinds of things. But yeah, the Din arc has been so minimal this season, and I really feel like they didn't challenge or really throw things at his character to really develop him to a point where it's like if he dies now, it'll be tragic, sad. Oh my god. But it's not satisfying, but it has some satisfaction to it because you're like, oh, I know he like, realized this thing about himself, like we had with Tech. Like we had that satisfaction with Tech being like, his relationship with Omega, where I feel like Din hasn't had that satisfaction. So if he does die, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Not because it's sad, but because it's like not resolved his character.
No. Here's the thing: if they for some reason kill off Din Djarin in the next episode, I will not be on this podcast next week. Okay, I will not be here. Okay,
that's a big call.
You won't want to hear from me. You won't want to hear from me. I'm gonna give it like a minus 1,000 stars the next episode.
Yeah, like
it's gonna be
it's
bad.
not even gonna, do you mean that in like a story way or like conceptually killing off his character as a show decision is bad?
Look, here's the thing. I would be perfectly fine with the Mandalorian. And I actually am fine with the whole idea. I actually like the idea that Rick Famuyiwa kind of put out there. We're just like, oh yeah, it means different characters. And I like the idea that like with every episode and sometimes with every moment, the Mandalorian can mean different characters. I feel like the end of this episode, the Mandalorian was Paz Vizsla. He was the Mandalorian for that moment. He was the guy. He was the guy that was saving everyone and was doing the thing. This is the way. That's it. That's the show. It doesn't always have to be about Din Djarin, but if they kill Din now, that's where I'll have a problem. I think he has to have a satisfying end to his character. I think maybe I would have been okay. I'm not okay with it, but I would more understandable if it at the end of season 2, where it's like, oh, he's learned all this stuff and whatever else. I've been as impressed with Din's character drive this season. I feel like he hasn't developed as much. I think he's actually regressed a little bit, which is kind of disappointing. So I think he has a lot more way to go. I think, look, they're not going to kill him. They're not going to kill him, are they? No, they're definitely not going to kill him. But like that would be crazy. But like this show, you can't. I don't trust Favreau. Okay, he's a little off his rocker sometimes.
The confusing thing about the character of Din is that he's gone from a character that was like the driving force of the story and a character that was being developed to like a vessel in which we're experiencing other things. And he's just kind of there from plot to plot inside everything, but he's not driving the story anymore. The story is much bigger than him, which is realistic. What's happened has been realistic. It's been subverting storytelling like styles in a sense. But to talk about like storytelling styles, you almost like one of the reasons why Tech's death was really telegraphed was we spent more time getting to know Tech and developing Tech's character in the last season, The Bad Batch, than any of the other characters. Like they really did a good job. And like even some of those episodes that I considered like throwaway episodes that didn't really advance the plot of the show, like the race episode, for example, was very tech centric. He was a big part of that episode. And now seeing what ended up happening.
Tech trick.
It was a very tetric episode. Tech trick episode. And so like
that's what I'm saying, man.
so you don't have that in The Mandalorian. You don't have this overemphasis on the character of Din. And you could argue, he's been emphasized less in this season than any season prior. And even less so than in Book of Boba Fett. There was almost more Din Djarin in Book of Boba Fett than there has been in this season in a lot of ways. And because there were some big moments with Din in those episodes that he was in, those few episodes of Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, it doesn't make sense for him to die here because, like you said, Ben, it wouldn't feel satisfying because you don't have that completion there. You don't have those last few episodes. Like if we get into season,
what I'm saying.
If we get into season 3 or season 4 or season 5, where are we? When we get into season 4 of The Mandalorian next season, and all of a sudden all the episodes are about Din and they're making him really heroic and like you really like him, he's dead. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Right.
So he has been saved by the fact that he has been sidelined this season for big plot stuff with Bo-Katan taking a lot of the space and the Armorer taking more space and Alakane taking more space and all these characters.
Okay. Well, here's the kind of out of galaxy thing I'm concerned about is I haven't believed all season of these rumored rumblings of discontent with some of the contributors of The Mandalorian, including Pedro. I've never really believed, I haven't actually believed them until this point where I'm going, like, logically, storytelling wise, what we're all saying and agreeing upon is like, yeah, his story arc isn't at the right spot for him to die logically. But I'm going, is he is he going to die because really Pedro wasn't doing a lot of the physical work of Din Djarin this season. He was doing the voice. Wants to depart this role at his point of his career for whatever reason. Like, is that going to be like, I'm worried that is the reason, and Din will die and it will be unsatisfying and it will be not complete, which I'm like worried about. That's my worry, but that's kind of like non-galaxy.
They have to have a contract to keep that from happening. Like you can't like this was such a big swing on Disney's part. I don't know if they realized that The Mandalorian would become like the #1 show on the planet, but I know they were trying to make.
Kind of nuts, wasn't it?
They were trying to make something really big, and it doesn't really make sense to like make a flagship show and that clearly has a plot that goes multiple seasons and not have a contract that has your main actor, your titular character be, contracted for like the length of the show. Like that doesn't make sense that they would have a point for him to back out of his contract at this point.
And I feel like, not to say that he's not invested in the role, but like I'm not sure I buy the idea that like he's having discontent with the role. Like he's essentially voicing the character, like with very few scenes that he's actually in the suit.
And that's been the case for a while. It's not new.
I'm not going to say it's easy money, but comparatively wise to like what Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder are doing, it's pretty easy to just keep doing that and taking a paycheck. And him continues to still be in Star Wars. And so like there may be a time in the future when he's done and they want to pass it on. I would hope that they would end The Mandalorian. I would hope that if they decide to kill him off, that's the end of The Mandalorian show. And then we start over with another show called Mandalorians. We're adding an S to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, also Jeff brings up a good point about Dave Filoni's film that has been announced. Like that it doesn't make any sense that they would lead all of these stories up to a big event that's in theaters that is going to be like the big climax of all of these Mandoverse shows and have Din Djarin not be in that movie. Like that doesn't make any sense.
But that's what I'm saying.
He's going to come back as a Force Ghost, guys.
Yeah, it's like
Voyager's point though in the chat is also something like me personally, I'm like reading into too much because I'm like that the star
Gee,
of
it's
the
not like he's
current
busy or anything. He's not like he's in another popular TV show. He couldn't be there or something like
Well,
that. There's nothing,
okay,
nothing.
look-
There's literally no other explanation that he just Pedro hates Star Wars all of a sudden and he doesn't want to come to Celebration.
yeah, that's reading too much into it. That's reading way too
Sorry,
much.
I'm sorry.
You guys
This
are my
is-
you're my you're my good like angel on my shoulder, being like
We're dragging you back from the
Okay.
break.
He's okay.
Come back.
Listen.
Come
All right,
back.
this is.
You're
this
my
is the-
reality.
you need a speech
I like it.
here.
I've been
okay?
worried. I
You
need
need a
help.
speech. All right, let's talk about this. All right.
Yes, please.
First of all, let's talk about Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness
What?
despises Star Wars. He hates
That's
it.
true.
It's the worst thing that ever happened to his life. He believes that Star Wars not only was terrible for him, but it ruined an entire generation of children. He is pissed off. Alec Guinness came back for every bit of Star Wars that they wanted him to do in the subsequent films. Now let's talk about Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford hates Star Wars. He does not hate Star Wars as much as Alec Guinness. However, he begged George Lucas to kill off his character because he was done with Star Wars, because he was tired of people seeing him and only seeing Han Solo and not seeing the man behind Han Solo or any other serious acting things that he was doing. But George Lucas didn't do it. And so Harrison Ford came back. Han Solo was in Return of the Jedi, and he also came back for the sequels as well, where he finally got his wish and they killed his character off. But he still came back after that, despite hating Star Wars. So if those two dudes who absolutely openly despise Star Wars, one of them thinking that it is a negative impact on the world, would take a paycheck, Pedro Pascal is going to take a paycheck.
That's true. I guess so.
Mark Hamill,
Oh.
and this is a conspiracy theory, and I don't like going to this corner of the internet. Mark Hamill did go on the record and apologize for being vocal about creative differences about his character with the sequel trilogy people who made them. He still did that stuff, despite disagreeing about it initially and not seeing the full picture until later. So
that's the thing is just like, like people like to make the point, oh, Mark Hamill hated The Last Jedi, which I don't know, like may be true. He did say a lot of things disparaging about, what was going on with Luke Skywalker's character, but he still did it. He could have easily just walked away. I think he would have still been fine, but he did. And, some of that is people need a paycheck. Some of that is we're overblowing people's opinions about things and how attached they are to certain things. And, and it's just, I don't know. I want to definitively say that like, this is not happening. And I think we're on the same page. I'm like 1% in Hannah's camp. I'm 1% like worrying, but I know 99% of me is just like, nah, okay.
I have two reasons why this can't happen. One reason I can't talk about for a while. The other reason is this character's not played by Sean Bean. Case closed.
There you go.
What kind of cryptic message is that?
If you know, you know. That's it. If you know, you know. One.
So hey, what did you say before that? The reason you know it's not happening.
Yes. One reason I can't talk about for a while,
Okay.
and the other reason is because this character's not played by Sean Bean.
Oh, I can't even begin to understand what the hell that means. But okay.
Okay. Let me translate it. Memes translate. Every character that Sean Bean has ever played on TV or film has died.
That's true. Wow, that's a good point. Yeah.
Sometimes
okay.
in very unexpected ways.
So you're saying the reason he's
and
not
then Din gets stabbed through the chest, and they pull the helmet off, and it's Sean Bean's face for no reason.
got the wrong one.
The Sean
Oopsie.
Like a
He's the
like
Bean
a
DeLorean.
Scooby Doo moment where they take off the helmet and it's not the real.
There's
it's not
a
the real Din
there's a
Djarin.
greater chance of Moff Gideon, I think, dying next episode, which I will also be kind of angry about because I think we haven't gotten enough of him.
Yeah.
I am disappointed that in this episode, Bo-Katan wasn't just like, "Yo, yeah, open the door. Here's the Darksaber. Come and get it." And he gets like 1 foot up. He's like, "Oops, my finger slipped. Oops, turned it on in your in your chest."
Gosh. Okay. So one last super chat from Jesse, and then let's move on to final thoughts. Because this episode is trying to be a 4-hour episode. As long as hard as it's can.
I have
it's
so much to
trying.
say.
I know, I still do too. And then I'm looking
go
at the
on.
clock and I'm like,
Think
oh my
about
gosh.
the guy from Bridgerton, that main guy that everyone was obsessed with when Bridgerton season 1 came out.
Mhm.
Everyone's like, he's amazing. We love him. He became like a fan favorite over the world. Like Bridgerton was like the most grossing Netflix thing ever at the time.
Mhm.
And then he's like, ooh, not coming back for season 2. I'm doing other cooler things. Anyway, sorry, right. We'll see. I'll go back on my words next week.
I see what you're saying. It's happened before. I just don't expect it to happen in Star Wars. Last thing that Jesse Bennett says, this better not be the last of IG-12. Yeah, of course. Like, I think that's a setup for future things.
We'll get some IG-12 at least in the next episode. At least.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do some final thoughts. Let's close this one out and end this madness that just wants to keep going forever and would if we don't forcibly end it. So,
but who's
all
the
other
acolyte, guys? Who's the acolyte? Oh, what? Hey, have you had some Skittles yet? Oh, what about Oreos? You love Oreos? Let's
Put your
talk about
Skittles
Oreos.
in your Oreos. And that's the episode. Skittles
man.
stuffed Oreos.
That
Do you
would
think
be
Moff Gideon
great.
likes Oreos or Skittles?
All right.
Who's the
okay.
M&M?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh
Ben,
Lord.
final thoughts and score out of 10 for The Spies.
Gotta get my head in gear. Skittles, Oreos. Okay, Mandalorian. Okay, back in
Get your head
track.
in the
Okay, here we
game.
go. Okay, here we go. Okay, so yeah, this episode very thought provoking, as you can tell, as you can see. This
Yeah.
episode, there's so much to talk about. And I'm kind of scared of next week because I think it's gonna be even bigger, even more intense in regards to things. And I'm also like, my only real complaint about this episode truly is just like, we're getting somewhere. Like this whole season, I think, is building up. I've loved most of the episodes in this season. I think we've had a great build up. We're getting to the right place. We're getting to where I want it to be. Now we're only one episode left, and I'm terrified that there will be a ginormous cliffhanger next week that will leave us when, and I don't know when we're getting Mandalorian season 4, which terrifies me. But we know it's written, so here we go. But this episode, in and of itself, was incredible. Probably one of the best episodes of the entire series thus far. Very nuanced, very well written, some great character moments, some great just dialogue moments. I love the scene between Din and Bo-Katan. And him devoting himself to her and to serving her. I think
very
great.
steamy. Ooh, very.
Yeah, you
very,
could take that from it too. You could take that from it too. We'll talk about it next week.
Cut it with a Darksaber. Whew.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
ooh,
if he takes
boy.
his helmet off next week, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, I just think this episode really had everything you could want in a Mandalorian episode. It had flying Mandalorian, a bunch of Mandalorians. It had pirate Mandalorians. It had flying stormtroopers with Beskar. It had Grogu, great moments. It had Zellans dropping F-bombs. It really was all over the place. And I really have not much to anything to complain about other than, I think the pacing was a little bit off. It was just the whole idea, just like introducing the Empire at the beginning of the episode may be intense. The entire episode, like, when's it going to show up? Like, when's the Empire going to show up? And then we spent most of the episode just kind of off with Mandalorian. So I think I will give this episode a solid 9 out of 10.
Nice. 9 out of 10 from Ben. How about you, Hannah?
Yeah, I really love the action sequences in this episode. I think the dialogue was really spot on, and I love the overall pacing, which Honestly, I haven't said that that sentence in many, many months. Goodness gracious. So, yeah, I really love this episode. It does very much make a contrast for me of what we've gotten this season so far. I wish we got Moff earlier. I wish we got this Mandalore planet. Let's go there. What's their storyline? I wish that was pretty much the only storyline of this season, really. We could have actually spent so much time there exploring it, exploring the Mandalorian lore, and had a lot more character development with even like characters like Axwoves, I think, and even Paz, get more development with them. So it's I really love this episode, but it's given me so much contrast of what we probably could have seen more in this whole season. But for this episode alone, really loved it. I'm going with Ben. 9 out of 10.
Awesome. 9 out of 10 as well from Hannah. This is tough for me because like I can't think of anything that I disliked about this episode or anything that I felt was wrong about this episode. But my ranking system is not about perfection. My ranking system is about, did it like blow me away to the point that I felt like it had done things that other Star Wars hadn't done. And I don't feel like it went that far. Like I don't feel like this just like added so much to the lore of Star Wars that it was just like mind blowing. So for me, it's a great episode. It's an entertaining episode. There were some moments in it, like the mentioning of Thrawn and the introduction of Pelion that like I thought was absolutely amazing, and I was so excited for. The Praetorian Guards, absolutely amazing. The action sequence at the end was fantastic. But I think just those moments alone weren't enough. I feel like the entire episode was very much it's your best of what the show can do. So for me, I'm going to say 9 out of 10. I still feel like there's a missing je ne sais quoi. There's a missing secret ingredient that's not in the episode.
It's a very Dominic thing to say.
Yeah, it's just not quite. It's just not. There's something that they still need to do that isn't quite there. Just that's some type of emotional layering or just taking Star Wars to a new place. It didn't take me to a new place. I didn't feel like this was a transcendent experience watching this episode. It was just great. So that's why it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Last call for some scores in the chat as we read them. Jeff gives it a 10 out of 10 because he loves Star Wars. We've mentioned The Last Jedi a few times. I want to reiterate my favorite moment ever was after we watched Last Jedi and Jeff said, "That was amazing." He was a true believer, and he knew from
all of us fake fans came out of the theater going like, "Whoa, what the hell did we just watch?" And Jeff was like, "Yes, yes, yes." He was the meme, just like, "Yes, Star Wars, yes."
That's amazing.
Did not take him 2 years of debate to get to that point. And then Kenny, another one of our great longtime listeners. Thank you for still supporting us, Kenny. 9.5 out of 10. One of the better ones of Mando season 3 so far. Matthew Hardy, 9 out of 10. It loses 1 point for the unnecessary kaiju monster. Yeah. I do agree that was neutral or negative as well. And that's one more. We got Brooke coming in with an 8 out of 10. Absolutely no explanation. Just a 8 out of 10. Score speaks. Score speaks for itself. Okay. Let's cover a hot second of celebration stuff. Let's talk about one thing.
Lord. Let's do it.
One thing, just so that
What's the one thing going to be?
What's this one thing? Ben, I think you had an idea about what this.
I put it in the note. I mean, we can put it to a vote, but I
don't know anything about this podcast. What are we talking about? What? Yeah. What did you pick?
Did I not put it in the notes? I guess I didn't put it in the notes.
I just don't read the notes. I just don't read the notes.
Star Wars movies. More Star Wars movies. There's 3 more Star Wars movies. Ray Skywalker's back. Daisy Ridley's back. James Mangold's doing a movie. Dave Filoni's doing a movie. Yay. Maybe they'll happen. Hopefully.
I think this is so smart. I think it's a great decision to spread it out. Spread it out. Different eras and things. I probably couldn't be happier with all three of these announcements. Is Magnog the one? Is he the Rey one?
No.
No, he's the old
Republic.
ancient Jedi one.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's a little too ancient. Like that, like 25,000 years. I think I've seen. I think is the rough number he's planning for.
That's the figure they've said. Yeah.
That's a long time. Like I would think maybe like 1,000, 1,000, 2,000. You know, the Great Jedi Wars or something. Maybe would have been a little bit more applicable. I don't know if when are the Jedi Wars? What is that a thing? Am I making that up?
Sounds
there's a few Jedi Wars.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
about 10,000.
This has been described as the first Jedi. This is essentially what we talked about after Last Jedi. It was like, what if they go back? What if Rian Johnson did the first Jedi? This is that movie. This is the first person to use the Force 25,000 years before the events of the Skywalker saga, which I think this is great for a multitude of reasons. I think giving us this trilogy, really, it's kind of a trilogy, but also it's not at all a trilogy. They're all separate movies that kind of act independent of one another and serve different areas of the fandom and also just broadly the movie-going audience, as opposed to I think Mangold's movie is going to be a hard sell to like my parents and like people that aren't as into Star Wars. But my parents are going to be all over that Mandoverse movie, okay? Because they love Mandalorian. And a bunch of people love, Baby Yoda on the big screen, sign me up. And then there's going to be a lot of kids out there that grew up with Rey Skywalker being like, hell yeah, sign me up. Rey Skywalker, Grand Master of the Jedi Order, that sounds awesome. So I think not all these movies are going to be beloved by everyone, but I think there's something here for everyone.
Because one takeaway I've had from the focuses of all these shows is that they're putting a lot into new audiences, where it's like Star Wars is arguably the biggest franchise on the planet. So it's like
let's go one of the most popular things to ever exist in human history.
Right? So it's like go deep. Like that there's gonna be a portion that like might not get some element, but it's like there's a lot of fans that are like waiting for the deep movies. So yeah, no, it's good. I think the variety is really good. What you explained there was awesome.
I feel like this is kind of, in a sense, a remix of things that have already been announced. First of all, like again, we kind of thought that Rian Johnson's movies were gonna be this. That was kind of an idea, and then maybe Benioff and Weiss's movies were gonna be this. And we've been hearing this concept of like an ancient origin of the Jedi, origin of the Force type story for a long time. So that one's not as surprising. I think that the other movies, this seems just like the obvious choices. Like we've been kind of floating around with some not obvious stuff for a while. Like I feel like this idea of Rogue Squadron, Patty Jenkins, this idea of Taika Waititi ruining quote unquote Star Wars, like some of these movie ideas that have been floating around for the last several years haven't really made a lot of sense. They've just been kind of like stuff, just ideas that seem that they've just been thrown out. Just kind of like almost like Rogue One and Han Solo were just kind of ideas. And, you know, they both are great films, but one of them did well. One of them kind of had some marketing issues. And so I think this is kind of the obvious choices for future movies. And I feel like things are kind of being reined back into like, instead of just these random projects that kind of are nebulous and don't really make sense. It's very clear, like, okay, we're going one ancient, we're going one future at the furthest point in the timeline, and then we're going one in the middle that's going to tie into like all the shows and stuff that we're watching now. Like that seems like a very logical approach. It's very clear, it's very concise, you understand what's going on. Everything serves a purpose. Like Ben said, there's something for everyone. So I think this is smart. I have the inclination, unfortunately, being someone who has had trouble trusting new movie announcement news from Lucasfilm for obvious reasons. I have some trouble with with being excited for this, because it seems like half of the movie announcements they've made haven't happened. Like,
Yeah, rightfully so.
we
Yeah.
have, again, some of them may still happen, but at this point, we have Boba Fett film, we have Rogue Squadron film, we have the kind of implied sequel to Solo that we all thought was going to happen, that was implied by the ending that didn't happen. Then we have the Benioff and Weiss stuff. We have the Taika Waititi stuff that still hasn't happened yet, that apparently is barely started production. Ryan Johnson stuff. Like, I'm just counting at this point. I've gotten more fingers held up than movies that have come out, and I think I'm still missing things.
Here's the thing. Here, I'm gonna restore some hope here. I'm gonna be hopeful, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't agree, or at least have some skepticism about this and have some reservations and be like, I don't want to get my hopes up, because I know I've had the rug pulled out from under me by Lucasfilm more than once now, and I really like that Rey Skywalker movie. Daisy really coming back, like that's a dream come true. That's something I genuinely thought would not happen for another 10, 15 years. The fact that it's happening now is amazing. And I'm really like, I don't want things, and I get everyone being things, but let's look at it this way. The previous films, what's different about this, first of all? Well, those previous films, they weren't announced on stage at Celebration. They didn't have really... They didn't have like a film, especially like having a filmmaker come out and talk about it. They really didn't have that much. We were given with these a premise for the movies, like almost like titles, not really. They said like the First Jedi or the New Jedi Order or the Mandalorian. Like they're not really giving us titles, but they're giving us these kind of definitive, here's what the movie's about, versus previous ones were, oh, it's the Game of Thrones guys, they're going to make a Star Wars movie. Oh, here's Kevin Feige, who you know from Marvel, he's going to do a Star Wars movie. Kind of these general ideas of, and I think it was reflective of, I think they just like said, hey, do you want to do a Star Wars movie? And they really didn't think all that much about it. And I think this feels more calculated and more things. And there's also been other things that said that, like, yeah, there's a script. Stephen Knight is working on the script, and it's almost complete. A couple more months, and then maybe some of them will be going into production pretty soon. There's some signs here that this is different now. And look, it still could go real bad. But I want to believe, and I think there is some signs here that Lucasfilm may have finally got their act together and doing Star Wars. I love how Kathleen Kennedy was on stage and literally said, like, so you've been wondering what we're going to do with Star Wars movies, have you? I'm like, yes, we have.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with you. And it's scary. It's a scary position to be in, to feel betrayed by announcements like this for so long, and then to feel like I'm falling for it again. Because I agree with you. I do feel like this feels different than the other announcements. There's, like, for all the reasons that you mentioned, this feels more legitimate and more set in stone and more likely to happen. And that makes me even more freaked out, because my own skepticism has been stripped from me against my will by facts, which is really annoying. So I am once again going to be even more disappointed if these don't happen than with the previous things. Even more, because it's even more clear that these probably will happen compared to the others. But again, like, the ideas make sense, and especially the Filoni one. Like, that seems like it's a big part of the Disney Plus stuff, and it's something that, it's something that we have wanted to happen. That has seemed like the obvious thing to happen for a very long time. I'm going to go back to 2008. 2008. Let's go back to there was a moment for me when I had this realization, and it was when the episode Cloak of Darkness came out, which was written by Paul Dini, and it was the episode about Ventress and Ahsoka and Luminara Unduli and the Clone Wars. That episode for me was the first filmic Clone Wars episode, in my opinion. That was the first Clone Wars episode that I felt like if that was a full movie and it was in theaters, it would have gotten good reviews. People would have liked it. It would have been a positive thing.
What was Cloak of Darkness again?
It was the episode where they're on a ship
Luminara.
and Ahsoka is with Luminara Unduli and they end up encountering Asajj Ventress. I believe
It's
she's
immediately after Bombad Jedi. They have Newt Gunray. They're trying to transport him back to Coruscant
right.
after they've captured him.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and they have this
And the
amazing
guard,
duel. This
yeah.
amazing duel
Hmm.
with each other. And
It's one of those episodes where it feels like it's an hour long. Like it feels
it was
long. It's
amazingly
really
paced,
cinematic.
amazingly written, and it was the first, in my opinion, the first great Clone Wars episode. And this is the first time, and it's where my ranking system comes from. If everyone wonders about this whole like ranking system, it is calibrated on Cloak of Darkness. If an episode of Star
If
Wars,
it compares
if
to
an
Cloak of
episode of Star
Darkness.
Wars is as good as Cloak of Darkness, it's a 9 out of 10. If it's not as good, it's an 8 out of 10 or lower. And if it's as good as Lair of Grievous, which is the next episode in the Clone Wars, it's a 10 out of 10. Because Lair of Grievous was the first 10 out of 10 episode. And that's how I calibrate it, is remembering back to how I felt about those episodes and then transferring those feelings onto comparing them with how I feel about The Mandalorian or Bad Batch or Book of Boba Fett, any of these things. That is how I calibrate it, because that's when I started giving that. Those are the first episodes that I gave rankings to ever. That's the first time I ever put a 10 out of 10 number to Star Wars, was those episodes. Yeah, everything's based on that. And that was 15 years ago. 15 years of rating.
No, it definitely wasn't 15 years ago. No, stop. No.
15 years ago. So technically 14 and a half. So here's the thing. What was I saying about this? Oh yes. Ever since that episode, ever since the end of 2008 when that episode aired, I have been of the opinion that the greatest tragedy in all of Star Wars is that George Lucas, in his whimsy, decided we're going to take the pilot of an experimental program and put it in theaters. We're going to take 3 or 4 episodes of it. We're going to stitch them together before anyone really has any grasp on what we're doing, with a completely new animation program, and just put it in theaters and then have the world, that be the introduction of it to the world. Like, absolute tragedy, because it only took 9 episodes after that for them to really perfect storytelling in the Clone Wars and to make some really awesome episodes. And that's not to say that Ambush and Rookies weren't good too. They were. But it like really started picking up towards the middle of that season. And so that's when I thought, okay, they have to put Clone Wars back in theaters. They have to give Dave Filoni a movie again. And this time they have to tell him from the start that it's going to be a movie. And he has to like go through the entire process of writing and directing a movie rather than writing a arc at the beginning of a series and then having it just be thrown in theaters. And the closest thing they ever got to that was, again, throwing the Savage Press episodes in theaters in a limited run. But again, that wasn't designed to be a movie, and it was only an hour. So that was 15 years ago that I had this realization, and I think a lot of people had this realization, that there needed to be a Clone Wars movie, and that Siege of Mandalore probably should have been a movie. But instead, Disney Plus grabbed it because it happened during the pandemic. So I wonder if the pandemic wasn't a thing, if that would have been in theaters. I think it's very likely it would.
I mean, I saw it on a giant screen with 1,000 people, so
Yeah.
I was happy about that.
So-
Dream come true.
I think this is a long time coming. This is 15 years in the making. This is Dave Filoni's opportunity to actually finally make a movie and to have it be in theaters, because he's been making movies in George Lucas style for 15 years on the small screen. And it's shocking that it's taken this long for this to happen, but it makes sense. This is perfect. This is them undoing all of the wrongs. This is, undoing the wrong of canceling the Clone Wars and just moving on to Star Wars Rebels. one of the strangest things Disney's ever done, most unexplainable things they've ever done. This is them undoing the wrong of not finishing the Clone Wars with a movie the first time around, and instead just putting some episodes on Netflix, The Lost Missions, and having people see it in German before English for some reason because it came out of Germany first. Again, makes no sense. And this is them undoing the wrong of having the Siege of Mandalore be a Disney Plus thing and not in theaters. And so this is
there's
great.
there's a strong chance that this movie will have Ahsoka and Captain Rex and Anakin in it.
This is the Clone Wars movie. This is the Clone Wars movie, and it's gonna have some big. It's gonna be the most nostalgic thing for fans of Star Wars animation and for fans of Star Wars series in general, because they're gonna see a Star Wars movie based on all of this stuff, and it's gonna be that moment when Harrison Ford, when Han Solo walks back on the Falcon for the first time in Force Awakens and says, "Chewie, we're home." Like, that's going to be what that moment was for fans of the Star Wars movies and the Star Wars saga. This is going to be that moment for fans of the Clone
what's
Wars.
this? We have some breaking news from Variety. Dave Filoni fired from Lucasfilm. Too bad. So sad.
I will say as a final note on this, I will say that this movie will be produced by Kathleen Kennedy, and she's the one that's making this movie as a producer. And this is not Dave Filoni secretly making a movie behind her back. You guys are nuts.
I often think about the whole Kathleen thing. And what if she stayed a producer? What if she just stayed as a producer and she didn't become head of Lucasfilm? Like, well, what would life look like then? Like,
they need another person
different.
I think what they need to do is they just need to not tell anyone who the president of Lucasfilm is. Just like, and whenever Kathleen Kennedy retires, just that person is in witness protection program. Whoever replaces her, so the internet people don't have anyone to blame for what they hate about Star Wars. It's just an anonymous person.
Chris, you're mute, champion.
Gracias.
I think you touched it with your nose before. I saw it happen. I'm like, I think he muted it just with his face.
This
just
needs
then.
to be further away. I don't know why I have this so close. It's just I also bring it close for dramatic effect too.
You do.
I forget that I do that, and I want to do it again because I want to go on another rant again. And it's like I'm gonna say this again because people don't get it. I'm not gonna stop saying this until people get it. I'm not gonna stop. Like, here's the thing: is the way Star Wars fandom works is people decide that there are certain things that they don't like about Star Wars personally, and then they decide that somebody had to do it. It had to be one person's fault. One person ruined Star Wars. And they've been like this since the 1990s, since the year 1999. And honestly, I'm going to say since 1983. I've seen some wild stuff about 1980. Not even 1983, 1980. I've seen wild stuff about 1980. There was a mass exodus of Star Wars fans in 1980 because tonally, somehow people did not draw the connections between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and furthermore to Return of the Jedi. But really, since 1999, Star Wars fans have done this thing where they've just taken everything they don't like, they've lumped it together, they've made it a holistic thing, and then they've blamed it on one singular person and said it's all this one person's fault that I don't like this group of things that might not even have anything to do with each other. And it's a complete fallacy. And it started with the prequels, where everybody who worked on the prequels, not just George Lucas had Rick McCallum and Doug Chang and so many other people.
Nick Kroll.
Yes, so many other people worked on the prequels, And these people just decide, all the people that didn't personally like the Phantom Menace and didn't personally like Attack of the Clones, they just all decided the reason why I don't like this is because of one man, George Lucas. And they literally drove George Lucas out of the theater. The reason why Dave Filoni did not get his movie ultimately until now is because George Lucas wouldn't even let him make a movie, because it would have been a George Lucas and Dave Filoni production, and George Lucas would not go back into theaters because of how fallacious Star Wars fans were. And so there was that. And then on top of that, Dave Filoni came along. And then you got the prequel generation and the EU generation, and those people that grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, who claimed that the Clone Wars was ruining Star Wars. And Dave Filoni was ruining Star Wars, because Dave Filoni took the amazing lore of the Mandalorians set up by Karen Traviss and then turned it into Death Watch and a bunch of pacifists. And people were pissed off. And Dave Filoni was hated for years as the person who single-handedly ruined Star Wars. And all of a sudden, George Lucas was a saint. Bring George Lucas back. George Lucas can do no wrong. We need George Lucas to do the sequel trilogy, please. We need him. His ideas are amazing. Dave Filoni, he's the evil person. And then we're at another point now where, people, Dave Filoni has ingratiated himself because all the Clone Wars fans have grown up who like that. And, those people don't know anything about Karen Traviss. They never read those books, so they don't have that gripe. And they see the Mandalorian and they're like, Baby Yoda's cute. This stuff is amazing. This is great. And now you have this thing where every single thing that people dislike about Star Wars, whether it's The Last Jedi or Force Awakens or the Han Solo movie or whatever people these days don't like, it's all Kathleen Kennedy's fault. We have to find someone to blame. Let's blame this person. This person's the president of Lucasfilm. Let's blame this person. They don't even know what her job is. They don't even know what she does. They don't know anything about her. They don't know the fact that if you look at the list of movies that she has worked on, it's basically a top 100 list of the best movies of all times that people love. Like, they don't realize this. They just are randomly picking a name because they're like, well, this person's the president. That sounds like an important position. If I didn't like what was going on in my country, I would blame my president. So let's blame her. They literally know nothing about how Star Wars works, and they're just making it up in their head. And she's the next George Lucas, the next Dave Filoni, the next person to hate on. At some point, they're going to pick somebody else. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we'll go for a long time with really good movies in theaters and people will just forget about it. It's probably going to happen when somebody makes, probably what's going to happen is the Rey movie is going to come out. And they're going to take Rey in a new direction as a character, and all the people who grew up with the sequels, who are like Reylos and really into like the 3 movies, they're going to watch it and they're going to just look at the director from Miss Marvel, and they're going to be like, she's ruining Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy's amazing. Bring Kathleen Kennedy back to do more Rey movies, because this new person has ruined Rey and ruined Star Wars. Like, it's not going to end. It's an endless cycle. It is not grounded in reality at all. It's not real. They're just making stuff up.
It's such an involved conversation with so many facets, and I totally agree with you. I think it's going to be the next person, and Jeff has a good point here. Of some people are starting to hate on Favreau in his writing style.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I hate it, but I kind of get why at points. Like,
he's not the best.
He's not the best. Yeah,
like, that doesn't mean anything. There can only be one best.
And that is ultimately the problem. That's the ultimate tragedy of like the people that just hate, the people that truly just hate to hate, because now the people that actually have criticisms have to be like, well, I can't really say that thing because I'll be lumped in with those crazies. Like, I can't.
That's what I'm worried about.
You can't legitimately complain about. Well, I think realistically, if you take a step back and ignore all the noise, you can say, look, yeah, the way Lucasfilm has been handling Star Wars movies the past little while, all the firing, stuff like that, that's a legitimate problem. And yes, that is a problem with Kathleen Kennedy. She's ultimately responsible for the direction of the company, and you could lay that at her feet and go like, okay, this is an issue. This is something you can actually criticize her for. But then there's the people that are like, oh yeah, the Mandalorian is great because Kathleen Kennedy has nothing to do with it, but then I hate season 3, and that means that Kathleen Kennedy secretly got her grubby little hands on it, and she forced Jon Favreau to do this and this and this, and that's why it sucks. And you're just like, what are you smoking? People, it's like, calm down.
Absolutely. And I think, season 3 has been an interesting point for that to emerge. Like, you never heard any of this in season 2 of Mando, but then all of a sudden in season 3, we don't like some sort of story flow, and it's like the whole thing's ruined. It's like it's in the bin now. It's gone. It's like terrible. It's like, oh
Yeah.
I took a jump. Are we not live?
I don't know.
Voyager, we are live. This isn't a figment of your imagination.
I think they mean live and in person.
Which we also do.
We have and we
Once.
will.
And there will be more of this. Okay, so first of all, I hate being a reviewer and saying things and having to compare things. I probably shouldn't do it, but like, I did say that, unfortunately, I made a backhanded comment towards Jon Favreau and even Dave Filoni by praising Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao, because all I wanted to say was that their writing's better. That's all I wanted to say. They've surpassed them. I believe that The Bad Batch is written better than The Mandalorian. That is my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are bad. And so I don't know how to say that in a way that isn't like dogpiling on Jon Favreau. I'm not trying to dogpile on Jon Favreau. I don't hate Jon Favreau. A lot of the episodes of The Mandalorian are absolutely amazing. I give them 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s. I'm so excited for that show. I'm so excited for the Dave Filoni movie. It's going to be one of the best things ever. That being said, I also have the opinion that the best team in Star Wars right now is Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao. They are the best.
Which, funny enough, I was there's some sort of meme like this. I need you to find this meme for me, Ben. But it was during Celebration, and they live streamed the Bad Batch panel, which I'm so stoked about. I loved it as much as every discussion of the Bad Batch. I was seemingly negative. I loved that panel talking about season 2. I was like, this is brilliant, and I was I was going crazy because my girlfriend, who's not that versed in Star Wars but understands all the functions of it, I was like a madman, explaining why Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett is such a perfect combination, and what aspects of what they bring to Star Wars, but also there's so many aspects. Like, if you cut Dave Filoni in half, each one has half of what he brings to the table, and that's why it works so well. And even with we have the departure of Dave being such a key creator of the Bad Batch from season 1, and then season 2, I don't know if is he I think he's just an executive producer on it, but he didn't direct or write any of the episodes. Am I right in saying that? I want to fact check that before I claim.
I think Brad Rao is the supervising director.
Yeah. So it's
he does direct.
Dave, but Dave didn't really have a foot in the directing. Of
Dave did
2.
it. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Dave, and he said that he's kind of they're his Padawans, he's taught them.
Yeah,
but they've now taken over.
So good, because you can't actually feel this be as much as even I had negative things to say about it, and even Ben, you did at some points. We weren't sitting there going, it's because Dave Filoni is gone, that's why it's bad. You can't. It wasn't bad. I don't want to say season 2 was bad either. But I was so impressed with that combination of what they brought and their understanding, and you can definitely tell a lot by a Star Wars creator by how they speak about it.
Yeah.
And in that panel, you can hear the way they speak, and it's just cut Dave in half, and that they are both two sides of him. It's
Yeah,
But
impressive.
it's just
I want more of
it's
them.
just this unfortunate weird tribalism that everyone they have to have their guy. It has to be I like Dave Filoni, and
The
they pretend
guy,
like he's
my
always like
guy.
it's not like Dave Filoni literally used to be the most hated person in Star Wars fandom, like the most hated. People loathe that guy. Just a few years ago. But they have to have that, and like he's responsible for everything good in Star Wars, and if he's not involved with it, it sucks. And you have to have the good guy and the bad guy, and Kathleen Kennedy's the bad guy, and Dave Filoni's the good guy.
And-
That's
and
just simple.
here's-
That's all it is.
Here's the thing, and I want to say something about the legitimacy of criticism, because here's the thing: is people are allowed to have criticisms of things, including The Last Jedi. They are, and I'm not saying that like the Kathleen Kennedy crowd, like I think it's a false statement to say that if you don't like The Last Jedi or have criticisms of The Last Jedi, then you are a Kathleen Kennedy hater, or people have to view you as a Kathleen Kennedy hater. And I'm going to explain once and for all how you can do this in a way that makes sense, that is logical. So I'm going to say this once and for all so everybody understands it. I think if you look at Rise of Skywalker in a vacuum as a movie, and The Last Jedi in a vacuum as a movie, Rise of Skywalker is objectively a better movie than The Last Jedi, in my opinion. A lot of people disagree with me. A lot of people disagree with me, and I don't have a problem with that. But I personally think Rise of Skywalker is a better done movie from a filmic point of view. I think The Last Jedi has issues. I think it has writing issues and shooting and pacing and many, many problems. And that being said, I don't engage in Rian Johnson because Rian Johnson is a good filmmaker and he makes good movies. And Glass Onion is fantastic, and Knives Out is fantastic.
Those are damn good movies.
And the TV stuff that he's worked on was fantastic. And I do want him to make more Star Wars movies. That being said, as well, I don't have an issue with J.J. Abrams either. And then I also don't have an issue with Kathleen Kennedy. So you don't have to, if you just have the opinion that Rise of Skywalker is a better movie than The Last Jedi in a vacuum by itself, not talking about how they relate to each other, because that's a different story. I think the way the pieces of the trilogy fit together make no sense. But if you have that opinion, you can have that opinion of not being hot on The Last Jedi and not be lumped in or choose yourself to be lumped in with all the irrational people that hate Rian Johnson and hate Kathleen Kennedy and think that they ruined Star Wars. You don't have to, because I don't. A lot of people don't. It is a typical opinion to have. It is a normal opinion to have that The Last Jedi is the weakest of those three films, and not go down this conspiratorial path that Kathleen Kennedy just wakes up every day and gets out of bed and says, what can I do to make Star Wars worse? Like, those things don't have to exist together. And I feel like that needs to be said. So if someone goes out there and says there are things about The Last Jedi I don't like, they shouldn't be shoved into the I hate Kathleen Kennedy corner, as they don't have to be. And then also, if somebody has those opinions, they don't need to take them as far as to blame this one person or these two people for all of these issues. Because really what it really simply is they decided to give Rian a lot of creative control, and he made something that was some people's cup of tea and other people's not cup of tea. And that's the end of the story. That's all that happened. Some people liked it. Some people didn't. Some people thought it was good. Some people thought it was bad. Everything else is just a mess. Everything else is fallacious and illogical to take it further than that, to make this whole conspiracy out of Star Wars being ruined by one or two people, out of just the concept of it is no more complex than here's a director who's a writer-director who likes having a lot of creative control, who makes good stuff when he has creative control. We're going to give him creative control. We're not going to put in a lot of input. We're going to see how it does. Oh, look, it made $1 billion. It made a lot of money. We're happy with it. Yes, a lot of people, it wasn't their cup of tea because he took it in such a different direction than a lot of people were expecting. That's the end of the story. There's nothing else beyond that. Everything else is made up.
And like I am of the opinion that the best Star Wars movie has not been made yet. We have not seen the best Star Wars movie yet. I think the best is yet to come.
So.
I also don't think we've seen the worst Star Wars movie.
Oh,
I think the worst is probably yet to come too. The most controversial is yet to come. We have 3 more movies coming, and they are going to be very controversial. No matter how good they are, there's going to be a certain subset of the fans that's going to hate it. It's going to be like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life hating James Mangold or hating Dave Filoni about this. And, it's just part of it. Unfortunately, I think that's part of the reason why there's been so many people getting out of the running of making a Star Wars movie, because like, I don't want to deal with that crap. I don't want to deal with those stupid Star Wars fans that are always going to hate me no matter what.
Skittles and a ham sandwich, am I right? No, but yeah, seriously, I think what you were saying there, Chris, of like the lump sum thing, the lumping in of people's opinions, not lump sum at all, the lumping in of opinions with other people is so true. Because it's like my experience of the sequels is going back to the damn metaphor. Like it's trying to say what's better, a bag of Skittles or a ham sandwich? It's like, well, hang on. It's not like for me, it's like 2 very different experiences and just entities almost. Like it's but I'm not saying it's retconned and sequels aren't Star Wars, but it's like they are 2 very different beasts in my brain, in my like audience viewpoint. It's like, is it 2 experiences? But I definitely do not want to be a sequel hater, and that's a very specific type of person. Anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Well, that was a heck of a tangent.
We used to remember before we had so much new Star Wars to review, and that would just happen almost every week with random news stories. It happened again, despite the fact
because
I love it.
We've literally just like 1 week we'll be like, oh yeah, Mark Hamill's coming to Celebration Europe. That's literally the only news we had this week. And oh yeah, we're getting a Clone Wars trailer in like 6 months maybe. And that's it. That's all the Star Wars. So let's have a tangent about Darth Plagueis and how much Star Wars fans hate Star Wars.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good.
Okay. All right. Let's close things out. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Huge shout out to the chat tonight. This is one of the most active chats on our live stream. So
it's a good time.
Big shout out to Jesse and Joel and George for super chatting, and everybody else leaving fantastic comments throughout the stream. As always, if anybody wants to join our chats while we're doing the show live, it's at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Thursdays every week. You can follow us on social media at the SWU. That is where you can get all the updates about things when we aren't broadcasting live. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Those are the 3 best places to follow us. Ben, thank you so much for hosting it tonight.
Oh yeah, this was a wild ride, and it was a pleasure as always. And yeah, we still have we discussed one of the 10 things that they announced at the first panel of Celebration. Like, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
We've gotten
what
1
is
hour
covered.
into 4 days.
Just amazing. And we haven't even talked to the guy that's actually been there and experienced the whole thing. So that's going to be fun too. But tune in next week, because I don't know how we're going to fit in an entire discussion on the finale of season 3 of The Mandalorian, and then also all the rest of the news and Celebration. And then 2 weeks after that, we're getting May the 4th and Star Wars Visions Volume 2 and Young Jedi Adventures and whatever else they want to throw at us. So, yeah, Star Wars is dead, guys. It's unfortunate that Star Wars died a long time ago. There's no Star Wars. Bury it. No more. May as well just close up shop because it's officially dead.
Absolutely. Are you muted again, Chris?
Yes, I was.
Oh, fun. That's really fun.
I need to figure
This is so fun. I was trying to lip read you.
Mute watch. All right. Thank you, Ben. At Ben Hart with no E is where you can follow Ben on.
Oh, wait. Something important. As of Monday, Star Wars Underworld celebrated its 13th birthday.
Yes.
13 years of this madness. Can you believe it?
You're a teenager now. We're teenagers.
I know.
Good
Wait,
fun.
it'll be
Good
able
fun.
to drink and drive one of these days. But right now we're good.
Jawa juice.
What a bizarre point of age. Oh, I love that. That's great. That's
Tana,
great.
thank you so much for hosting as well.
Oh, this has been a pleasure. How do we be here for so long? It's like 3 hours. No, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
I was waiting for one of you to just disappear. I'm like, how are you
Yeah,
still
we usually
here?
like, oh, we gotta go now. I'm so glad we're all here for it. Very sad that Dom wasn't here. I'm sure he would have had so many fantastic rebuttals.
He would have been
so
the
many
one to
points.
disappear.
He
He'd have been
would
like,
have
I'm on
been like-
Eastern time, guys. I'm
45 minutes ago, you'd be like, wrap it up!
No! Oh, that's so good. That's so good. But no, yeah, it's a great time. Can't wait for the finale. I'm sure we'll talk about that and much more next week. Very, very excited for it.
Can't wait until Din Djarin gets his... I can't wait until Din Djarin gets his
I thought
mind
I
wiped
turned
by
that
the
down.
Mind Flare next week. Yay!
Oh, imagine. Good stuff.
And you can follow Hannah on social media at the Raeside.
R-A-E. S-I-D-E.
Raeside, yes. I was making sure I wasn't muted
You
there.
usually spell it. I like it when you spell it.
That's what you're waiting for. Yes. For those of you who are listening, R-A-E, side. Side is spelled normally, like side. If you don't know how to spell it, go back to school. Thank you. I hope there's only one way to spell that. What else do we do? Oh, yes. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed to our YouTube channel. We really, really appreciate it. And if you haven't, make sure that you punch that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for super chatting. Thanks to all of our channel members. Definitely also subscribe on our audio feeds. Again, a reminder, if you forgot, if you're just watching on YouTube, all of our celebration stuff is on the podcast apps. Dominic did not film himself. He recorded himself. It is audio only. It is not on YouTube. So go to Spotify, go to Google Podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts. Those are the places that you can find all of the content from Star Wars Celebration London. And there's a lot of it. So definitely check that out. A lot of great stuff there. And definitely subscribe and leave a review over there. And then also one final reminder, the SWU Network Discord. That's where you can chat with us throughout the week about Star Wars, about many other things. That's where you can be involved in our watch parties and game nights and lots of incredible fun stuff over on the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. I'm going to say it every week, and I think I'm just going to not stop saying it for 5 years. Discord is the new thing. It's the new thing. Like, if you are one of those people that uses Facebook to talk to people or uses Twitter to talk to people, please come to the 2020s and make a Discord account. Thank you.
At Dom.
I feel like if you're like trying to promote yourself, you're trying to like get yourself out there and you want to get your thoughts out there to like millions of people potentially, you're going to want to post on Facebook and Twitter. If you actually want to have a conversation with someone and not yell at someone or yell at people, go to Discord.
What is happening here?
Yes, I do not have negative experiences on Discord like I do on other social media, because it is not like it's not like an open social media. They're moderators. Like the way that it works is like social media is just like everywhere. It's like millions of people. It's billions of people. And it's like maybe there might be moderators in certain spots, but they're all different. And your experience is being controlled by a lack of moderators mostly. And then like different moderators in different areas. And it's just like no one, it's an absolute mess. It's the Wild West. It's the Outer Rim. Discord, you have a server. Everybody on that server is just on that server, and then there's moderators and people controlling that server, so that if there are issues, they're dealt with. It's how things would be in real life when you had just like a house and somebody's house, and if somebody starts like doing something inappropriate, that you just be told, please leave my house. Like,
Dude,
come to my house.
What are you
Come to my
talking
Discord
about?
house.
What are you Why are you spending 10 minutes?
For the record,
explain
Hannah's
to
hat
our
is now
viewers?
backwards, so it's really getting crazy up in here.
Whoa, you said you got to come to the 2020s, and I feel like I'd be cooler to be in the 2020s. I don't know.
I'm explaining why Discord's better than Facebook and Twitter, and why the 100 to 300,000 people who follow us on social media are wrong and should just join our Discord.
Oh, heaven above. Oh, fair enough. The
link is in the description and in the notes of all the podcast stuff. All right. That's it. We're out of here. We'll be back in 7 days' time. For Ben and Hannah and all the fantastic folks
Live
at the Star Wars
long and
Underworld.
prosper. Star Wars sucks.
Good lord.
My name is Chris.
Why?
And may the Force be with you.
No squeezy, bye baby. No.
I'm out of here, mother effers.
It's a ham wrap with Skittles in it.